Hello, good evening, and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another round of highly exciting and epic and entertaining racing action in the Just Two Idiots Championship Series Season 13, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. Today, we take a look back at all the racing action as if it were live from round number 3 of the MX-5 season of the J2ICS, and we are here at none other than the Okayama International Circuit to complete both our Japanese doubleheader and also the first half of the season. The Okayama International Circuit, previously known as the Tanaka International or TI Circuit, upon its opening in 1990, and it has gone from being a private venture of a circuit and arguably the play-by-mention when it came to racing circuits on the Asian continent, through to a circuit has been highly respected for the test it provides, both at a club, a national and an international level, hosted in 1994 and 1995, of course, the Pacific Grand Prix, and a regular host to this day of the likes of Super GT, GT World Challenge Asia, and also Super Formula Lights. But why exactly does this circuit need to be respected? Well, over the course of its 2.31 mile length, it's one of those circuits whereby it's all about a blend of corner sequences, which mean that overtaking is very challenging. And the first half of the lap, it's all sweeping bends and long straights, which definitely offer up plenty of width for overtaking opportunities and also the power of being smart with the draft. But the second half of the lap, or the club circuit, it's all about what is back-to-back hairpins, with many of them being switchback style hairpins, where to be on the inside of one corner puts you on the outside of the next one, and it's finding the right balance and act of when to attack and going just as much around the outside as is on the inside that could see you potentially make the move or lose out in the long term. But who exactly is going to find the right balance and act, and who exactly is going to clamour their way to the top? Well, that's what we're here to find out today as we bring you all the racing action as if it were live. Indeed, you're tuned to a post-round broadcast with the racing action having occurred on Wednesday the 24th of June 2026. We bring it to you as if it were live today, this Thursday the 25th of June. That means here in the commentary booth, we do not know what happens in the practice session that's coming to a close, and on the upcoming qualifying session, or most importantly, our two races, and it's going to be as close as possible to the raw live viewing experience for you guys and girls tuning in at home. Speaking of which, you're catching all this racing action for this season on the one place you can do so. That's on youtube.com and search for Paul Walsh Productions or PWP. And indeed, why not subscribe today to stay up to date with all the latest racing action from the Just Two Idiots Championship Series Season 13. In the commentary booth, you have myself. My name is Paul Walsh for the uninitiated. And in terms of our schedule for today, times in Eastern Daylight Time, EDT, or what is Universal Coordinate Time -4, UTC -4. As we can see, in approximately around about 8 minutes, we're making our way into our qualifying session, our third of the season. 20 minutes in duration, due to get underway at 10 past 10, with all our drivers out there trying to go for pole position, after which we'll take a brief breather before making our way to the grid for the first of our two races. Open up, of course, with a 20-minute sprint at 25 to 11 this evening, and then we'll return to the grid at what will be just before 11 o'clock for our 40-minute feature race to complete our proceedings here for the first half of the season and our time at the Okayama International Circuit. But given the stories that we had at Tsukuba last time out, it's only right that we bring you up to speed with what exactly went down in round number 2 and how it sets up the scene for round number 3 today. So without further ado, let's get to it. And as we can see, in terms of our calendar, we're in the midst of our Japanese doubleheader, and here today we complete it at Okayama. Last time out, on the 17th of June, we're at the Tsukuba circuit, and what we got to see there at Shimatsuwa was an absolutely brilliant pair of races. But it wasn't just the races that kept us on our heels. Indeed, we got to see some incredible battling action in what was none other than the qualifying session itself, whereby, in the end, it was not Captain CK who would take pole position. He looked so set for it once again until it all slipped out his grasp, much like Alton Park, whereby he was on pole for the majority of the session. Then right at the end of the session, season debutante, returning after missing season 12 of Bobnova, took pole position by 800ths in the very end and was absolutely ecstatic about achieving it. Meanwhile, what we got to see was outside that front row, well, it was tantalisingly tight for what was third place. And in the end, whilst third place may have gone, was 1.5 tenths behind to Simply Steve, we had to be at the top of a stack of a pack in the form of what was third through to ninth, just separated by 1600ths of a second. But conversely, there was difficulty for Urko and AJ in qualifying, whereby they seemed to struggle, taking 11th and 12th respectively, and the circuit seemed to lose pace as the session went on. Now in race number 1 for Simply Steve, it wasn't to be a third place starting. The technical issue on the grid meant that his car had to be taken to the pit lane, and he started the race a lap down. So it opened up a bit of a doorway at the front of the field, whereby Bobnova and Captain CK, they were already through the door and trying to run away. And after plenty of battling in the opening few laps, Knotavin made his way from 7th to 3rd and closed the leaders down, resulting in an absolutely epic freeway fight. But before we come to how that concluded, there was also plenty of battling going on further down the field, including, of course, the battle for 6th place between Geng, Urko and Nicolator, when error for Geng costing the Chancellor position, and then an instant between the two Bong Life Motorsport teammates of Urko and Nicolator into turn 1 lap 16, when it definitely saw Urko come out on top in the Battle of the Bongs. However, unfortunately, Nicolator wasn't too pleased about it, but they didn't go to the stewards because both of the teammates realised that if they were to go to the stewards, it would cost them championship points in the team's championship, so they decided to ride the proverbial high of achieving all those points and instead just settle their differences and move on to the next race. It definitely seemed to be the fact that in the Battle of the Bongs, it was either going to escalate or it was going to calm down, and it definitely calmed down by the time they went to the feature race. What we also got to see was, at the end, a superb battle for 10th place between Cat Daddy and Omega, which came down to less than 4 attempts at the finish line. And, well, the top 3 in the end was Bobnova taking his first win of the season and breaking the multi-season win streak in Knotavin. In the fact he was able to take that pole position, hold on to lead, and then after that, Captain CK was just as much fighting with Bobnova for the win as he was having to defend versus Knotavin, and therefore Bobnova took his first win of the season by 4 attempts at the finish line. Captain CK was your runner-up in the end, once again the bridesmaid, not quite the bride, and having to defend increasingly more and more as Knotavin got closer and closer but could not find a way through, meaning that Knotavins win streak has ended, but its run of podiums has not. Then coming into the feature race, well, what we got to see there was a very interesting start, whereby our front rower, Garlic Dog and Geng, well, they were forced into pit lane with 40-second stop and hold penalties come the end of lap number 1 because they had started the race ahead of the safety car, whereby the safety car had yet to clear the pit entry limiter line by the time we went green flag racing, and it meant our front row drivers were both deemed responsible and they were taken to the very back of the field. So they were out of the race effectively, and it meant Sonny Urko inherited the lead. However, this led to a top 8 which was absolutely fast, furious and ferocious in the battling, and it was only at the midway point of the race where it all seemed to slip apart and the field completely split when Tagish and Captain CK had a huge coming together on the exit of turn 8 on lap 18, and it forced them both out the race. It split the top 6 that remained, and then suddenly we saw Knotavin run away with the lead, having taken it from Urko a couple of laps earlier, and Bobnova meanwhile to fight incredibly hard to move into second with a third of the race remaining. Meanwhile then, the fight for third really became the big theme in the closing 15 minutes, whereby we saw Nicolator, AJ, Simply Steve and Urko enjoy an impressive battle, and it would be none other than what was Nicolator who would take that third place in the end, having been dropped by Bobnova and Knotavin, the winner, but in turn he'll feel as though he was his own personal winner, being able to bring home that third place, fended off AJ in those closing stages, and holding on by only 21 hundredths of a second. So Knotavin definitely returned to winning ways in the feature race, with Bobnova not too far behind, although regretting the fact he couldn't come through the field as quickly as Knotavin could. But it was definitely an exciting way to wrap up our time at the Tsukuba circuit. And it means we're now here today for the Okayama International Circuit, after which we'll take our mid-season break week, and then we'll be back for an American triple header to see out the season, starting, of course, in the state of Illinois for the Chicago Street Circuit, the course board on iRacing and brought to life in 2023 for NASCAR, and then we're making our way to the state of Virginia for VIR, and then we bring the curtain down in the US state of Florida for the Daytona International Speedway. But that's in a few weeks' time, and as we come on to more about today, well, let's talk a little bit more about our host circuit. It is, of course, the Okayama International Circuit, the full circuit located near the town of Mimasaka in the Okayama prefecture of Japan, from which it does take its current name. Now, a big thank you to iRacing.com, not just their brilliant simulator, but the absolutely fantastic track maps contained within it. And as we can see here, 11 corners in totality, many of these corners taking British names, and the reason for that was the fact that a number of British drivers were brought in to assist with the development of the circuit when the foundations were being laid, and in terms of the overall design and exactly how the corners should be shaped. And that's why you do have the likes, for example, of none other than Atwood Curve, also the Sir Sterling Moss S, and also we do have Mike Knight corner at turn at number 10. But as the drivers roar the way down the start for the straight and in towards first corner at turn number 1, they'll find themselves going into a very late apex bend, which sets up a switchback run into the medium speed corner of Williams at turn number 2. It'll be flat out on the exit as they roll the way through the Moss S and head in towards Atwood Curve, an off camber corner initially on entry, but heavily cambered towards the exit, and it's all about getting on the full throttle as quickly as you can to blast your way down the back straight. As they make the way towards the hairpin, it'll be hard on the brakes there, but you can go just as much around the outside as you can on the inside, but they're going to go from 2 to a single file wide come the run of Revolver, as it's a very tricky corner to get right in a 2-wide situation, let alone when you're 1 wide. And coming out to Revolver, it's a double left sequence to turn 6 and 7, coming through Revolver into Piper, after which it's a short stretch, the uphill hairpins of Redmond and Hobbs at turns 8 to 9. We expect plenty of side-by-side battling between those two corners, and then to Mike Knight corner, it's all downhill for the sweeper, and into the very tricky last corner, aptly named, of course, given it's the final corner of the circuit, but also a very challenging challenging corner for the simple reason it's a very tight late apex. You need to brake exceptionally deep in order to carry all the speed onto the start-finish straight, to complete lap and do it all over again, or to finally see the finish line. Now, to give you a quick reminder of our rules before we go racing, this is an open setup championship using the global Mazda MX-5 Cup car. Indeed, this is the MX-5 season 13 of the J2ICS. Qualifying-wise, an open qualifying format shall be used, with drivers having 6 flying laps available, plus, of course, an out lap from the pit lane. Although there's no overtime in qualifying, so as soon as the clock goes to 0, they need to get their laps done, otherwise we will take the previously best set lap from each and every driver. In terms of Grand Prix race format, which does continue, of course, for this season, we only have one crown jewel round, and that'll be in round number 6. Well, the races shall commence by a double-fold rolling start, as is a tradition of MX-5 racing, particularly here in the Just2Idiots Championship Series. The feature race grid shall be set based on results of the sprint, but we invert the top 8 finishing positions. To put that in layman's terms, the winner of the sprint starts in 8th place of the feature, and we continue that inversion until we get to the 8th place finisher from the sprint, and they start on pole for the purposes of the feature race. There are no mandatory pit stop requirements in the races. We're not expecting anybody to come into the pits for tyres or fuel, but if a driver does come into the pits, it may be for a fast repair, of which they've got 2 available, alternatively because they've been a little bit cheeky and picked up a drive-through penalty for 16 instant points, and should they get another 8, they'll continue to pick up drive-through penalties as they go, and all race duty shall be conducted post-round. But as we make our way back to the circuit, ladies and gentlemen, well, let's be up to speed with the championship standings coming into this round, and as we can see, starting with the Drivers' Championship, well, Knotavin leads the way for night racing on 94 points, 25 ahead of AJ, and the privateer right now definitely leading a very tight pack to chase down Knotavin. And whilst it was the end of the multi-season win streak for Knotavin, to be fair, he still proved to be very much the driver to beat, and right now he may prove unstoppable this season, particularly if he can continue this run of podiums that extends all the way back to round number 1 of season 12. But behind the Canadian, you have AJ the privateer. He's been a little bit inconsistent this season, particularly that qualifying session at Tsukuba was really a big surprise, taking that 12th place and 13th in race number 1, only to come through for 4th in race number 2. But if he can establish that consistency, there's no reason why he cannot be the leading challenger to Knotavin. Nicolator sits in 3rd for Bobnova Motorsport for 2 points behind, and indeed a little bit of frustration given the contact with Urko in race number 1 at Tsukuba, otherwise he would be your 2nd place runner at the moment, but Bobnova Motorsport driver will definitely feel as though he's right in the midst of a top 3 battle. Simply Steve sits only 3 points ahead of Corndog in the fight for 4th, with Simply Steve's technical issues going into the race at Tsukuba definitely cost him dear when he had that 3rd place start. What could it have been if he'd been able to start race 1 where he qualified? Well, that's a big what if question for the Speed Squad driver. And Bama Sim Sports Corndog there sits in 5th place, continuing to rise through the ranks, with Urko a further 2 points behind in 6th for Bobnova Motorsport, a point ahead of Cap Daddy. And then we do have Bobnova having competed in only 1 round so far. The team What Team driver immediately picking up a huge haul of points and moving up to 8th. Could we see him move even higher today given he's back once again? Behind him it's then Biker Pilot 3.8 races ahead of his teammate of Yo Mega based on result countback, but both equal on points to 46 apiece. And outside the top 10, it's Garlic Dog in 11th for playing race cars ahead of Geng, followed by Captain CK, Dickinson, and Pancakes, with Tomothy in 16th for Bicular ahead of Speed Squad's Etme Dust. Now, Tagish in 18th place for Bad Math Sim Sports. Unfortunately, will not be seen on the grid for this round. He's the only driver who comes into this round with a penalty, and well, it is a sizable penalty, this one, so brace yourselves for it, ladies and gentlemen. But it is a penalty whereby he has a round or a race ban, if you will, for round 3, and that is also a disqualification for the results of the feature race of round 2 due to the incident which occurred between himself and Captain CK, as we understand it. Indeed, it was deemed to be entirely to Gish is misdemeanor. That's by the stewards, not by us here in the commentary booth, and therefore that's why we're seeing Tagish not able to compete in this round. But expected to be back for round number 4, but the rules are the rules, and that's why we do have the stewards try and keep the racing as civil as possible. And unfortunately for Tagish, it hasn't quite worked out. But hopefully we'll see him back in the near future in round number 4. And we see Steezy Jr. they're completing the order with 0 points to his name so far, but he'll be able to get some points on the board today. And as for what is our team's championship, we take a look at that as well. And as we can see here in the teams, so it's Bobnova Motorsport who lead the way, have taken over on top, and they could have had even more points if not for the Battle of the Bongs, of course, we mentioned earlier on. And well, it definitely cost some major points to Nicolator, but Urko picked up the points as Nicolator dropped them. And understanding right now, they open up a bit of a lead. 23 points to their advantage to playing race cars, who moved from 4th to 2nd. And once the results have not been headline grabbing at playing race cars, once again, much like in season 12, they're proving it's the Davids, not the Goliaths, that can punch very much towards the top as they move 3 points ahead of Night Racing, with the solo effort in Knotavin definitely seeing them rise up through the order. And if they had 2 drivers on grid, you would imagine they would be leading the championship, and Knotavin right now definitely putting all the work in and sitting in third, 2 points ahead of 3.8 Racing. But the big thought today is, of course, will we see our leaders pull away, and will we see the focus turn towards the battle for second place, given the fact we've got 3 teams separated by only 5 points? Speed Squad, meanwhile, I'd love to be a part of that battle for second, 12 points behind, and we have a 13-point gap to Bad Math Sim Sports, we're only 5 ahead of Bicula, and then we do have Team What Team completing those standings. But of course, just as we make way into qualifying, and I'll schedule back up screen once again, we need to tell you a little bit about the sponsorship for this round, and that is the title of this round, Mr. Playing Back due to Florida Heatstroke, brought to you by none other than Omega. A big thank you to Omega, a long-time race in the Just 2 Idiots Championship Series, for sponsoring this round. And I did have the opportunity to catch up with him earlier this week in the build-up to the round to understand the story behind it. And it is because he's currently on vacation in Florida, and he was explaining to me the fact that given the heat index where he is currently in Florida is between 100 degrees Fahrenheit and 107 degrees Fahrenheit, those are temperatures in which the risk of heat stroke is very high. So he's decided to play a bit of a spin on it by suddenly he's missed the plane back due to the fact he has proverbially picked up Florida heat stroke. I think he's just addicted to be on vacation, to be fair, and understandable for Omega. I would love a vacation. I think we all would at some point, given we're in the heat of the summer, but definitely heat stroke is no joke, and he's keeping it nice and cool and safe as we're trying to do the same here in the UK. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, as we give you the backstory there behind the sponsorship of this round, and of course all of our rounds this season being sponsored by different drivers and long-standing community members of the Just 2 Idiots Championship Series, well, it is time for us to now make our way into the qualifying session. 20 minutes, all drivers will make their way out onto the circuit, but who exactly is going to take pole? That's what we're waiting to find out. But as we do sit here right now and wait for qualifying to really get underway, and I say that because the clock is ticking down, but nobody is rushing to get out there, well, there might be a bit of a reason for that. Let us explain. Now, you may notice on your screen a few puddles out there. We have had some rain early on today prior to practice, and what it has meant is that we have seen some standing water accumulate. That is gradually drying out, as we do see Garlic Dog be the very first driver to adventure out into the circuit. Now, we have had question marks. Do you run the wet tyre? Do you run the dry tyre? But it does definitely look as though it's a dry circuit at the moment, or a mostly dry circuit, much like Alton Park was, to be fair, if many of you remember that from round number 1, where we just have those isolated pools of water, and the slick tyre is the tyre to be on, so long as you don't touch the water. Although, saying that, Garlic Dog trying to get some tyre temperature, takes a bit of curve at turn number 2, and quickly understands what happens when you take a wet curve with a slick tyre. We believe he's on slicks. Unfortunately, we don't have that data available to us here in the Conte booth, so therefore we're going to have to do a bit of guesswork, ladies and gentlemen, as to what tyres drivers are on, and hopefully we get it absolutely right. But if not, I'm sure we can make a little bit of a laugh and a game out of it either way. As Garlic Dog makes his way on around, well, this Okayama circuit, as we mentioned earlier on, a very challenging one to overtake at, and qualifying could prove to be very valuable here today. Now, it's not to say overtaking is impossible, but because of the velocity of the direction changes, and the fact that practically every corner has its symmetrical opposite at the circuit, or every section of corners has a symmetrical opposite that follows it. For example, we do have the hairpin here, a right-hander at turn number 5, followed by a double left into a left and a right. Well, the thought process is, whether you're on the inside or the outside, overtaking and defending is just as viable. You've just got to be ready to commit. But that also means, much like what we saw at Tsukuba, tyre life is definitely going to feel as though it's at a premium. There's a lot of tyre leaning at this circuit, particularly in the second half of the lap, where the corners become much more aggressive and the braking zones as well become much harsher on the car. So therefore, you can imagine, and some drivers here today, they may look a little bit slower, particularly in the feet race to start with, because they'll be protecting their tyres, and they'll be towards the end of the race where they try to unleash their pace. Oh, that's got a bit wrong for Geng there. He's got around on the exit Revolver before he's got to Piper, and well, that's gone around very quickly, but hopefully we see him get it pointed back in a straight line shortly. I'm trying to understand what's on the car there, on the side of it, a bit of symbolism. Hopefully that's not Wingdings, if anybody remembers that text font from Microsoft Word all those years ago. It's crazy to think, growing up, that used to be the thing that everyone put their essays in on their schoolwork in order to wind up teachers were being told, can you please put it back to Arial font 10? But as he makes his way around right now, will it be a front or a font for Geng? We'll have to see, as we've got a few more drivers started to leave the pit lane, including Dickinson. So a few drivers have decided just to wait, see what the others do first, and then get out there. But of course, you can't wait too long when it comes to qualifying here at Okayama's full circuit, because our drivers do have a lap time, which is just shy of 2 minutes. You do the mathematics, an out lap plus 6 flying laps, so you do all 6 of them. And, well, you do have a grand total of what is 14 to 15 minutes being used up over distance. So you've got a 5-minute range of a window with which to play with, but you want to get those laps in sooner rather than later. And also, there is the thought that the rain may be returning later on today, and if it does, that could definitely throw a curveball into the mix there. Oh, as that's a curveball for Knotavin, and well, championship leader getting it wrong, coming through Revolver. Well, right now, definitely not the way he wanted to go whatsoever, but he gets it back together for now. But understandably, that's a small mistake, as we do see our time tower disappear and reappear there. That's on our end, not on your end, ladies and gentlemen. That's just a small technical hitch, but don't you worry about that. We've definitely got that under control and under wraps. There's a few more tries started to head out the pit lane as well. But will we start to see those first times coming soon? I think we will. The very first driver who is going to be coming in, and so I'll be timing in due course, will be Garlic Dog. And, well, when he does come around, we look forward to seeing what his first lap will be. Indeed, he'll set the benchmark in the old Spice machine for playing race cars. Very simple livery for this season, but to be fair, simple is sometimes better. You can have all the complicated liveries in the world, but sometimes the simplest ones are the most catching. If anybody remembers, of course, the Braun GP car from 2009's Formula 1 World Championship, where it did not have any sponsors until it did have Richard Branson's Virgin put the only sponsorship logo on the car for some time, and then they did change up and bring a few more sponsors in, but otherwise this is the definitive white and lime green machine from Braun GP, and of course a little bit of a unicorn car in what it was able to achieve. But the first time's on the board, and it's a Garlic Dog at 54.641, and we'll have to wait and see who else can put a time in as Dickinson goes on to his first flying lap. That dry line really notable there on the racing line, and that's why I suspect a lot of drivers will be on slick tyres, but they know they've got a very narrow band on which to drive, and that always makes it a bit more exciting. But as Corn Dog comes to the line, well, he raises the bar to 54.200. And so therefore a bit more time being found, but of course more time will come as the session goes on. As Gang, meanwhile, where he says, hold on everybody, I could go a lot quicker than that. He goes 4 seconds faster on a 49.979. So there we can see those lap times really starting to tumble on in, and this circuit will be getting quicker and quicker as the qualifying session goes on, understandably, given the fact that we do have always a drying circuit. Slick tyres are going to be the theme. You've just got to find the balanced act of using the racing line and not really touching those curves, because the thing about those curves, they look flat, but they're far from flat. They are elevated. They do have some sharp edges, and they do also have the ability to pull water on them, and it's that standing water on the curb that always catches the car out, because those curbs, they're not made of the same material as the tarmac itself. They're painted surfaces made out of slightly different material, and therefore they offer less grip in the dry, and in the wet they're going to offer far less grip by comparison, practically zero grip in some circumstances. But as we do see Gang make his way down into the braking zone here for the hairpin, and being allowed on through there by none other than Pancakes, who just takes it nice and easy in the lovely liveried Mazda. Well, the 481 driver here still yet to get a lap on the board, but more drivers on out there, of course, and right now Knotavin makes his way to the line. As he does so, he puts the benchmark in at 50.8 for himself. So that's 8 tenths off the overall pole time at the moment. But understandably, there's still a lot of time out there. And there's a few laps still for him to deliver. We've also got Empty Dust out there. You can see him a bit further back in the Sakura Blossom livery machine, of which we have 2 of them here today. Both together out of the circuit at the moment, and one following the other. Simply Steve just behind there in the other one, which is great to see. And the 2 teammates working together once again. For Simply Steve, of course, this will be a bit of a hope of a redemptive qualifying session. Not that he didn't qualify well at Tsukuba, but the technical issues that he saw going to the grid in race number 1 at Tsukuba absolutely spoiling what could have been his day in the spotlight. But as he does, full of Empty Dust there, trying to work together. We've got one driver getting it wrong. Is that Bobnova I see there getting it wrong? Yes, it is, going through Piper. And well, Bobnova, you don't normally expect him to make mistakes, given how he performed at Tsukuba, but everyone can make mistakes here. Make no mistake about that. As we almost make a mistake out of our sentence. Goodness me, how many times we put mistake in a single sentence? I think that was 4 times. But as Bobnova makes one around, that was his out lap, to be fair, so he's got a bit more time to go, but definitely not the mistake you want to be making that early on. So the 605 driver here will be eager to try and rectify that, but of course, once you make one mistake on an evolving circuit, well, how many more are you going to make? Because understandably, it gets into your head a little bit. Well, the best way to find out is to ride on board with the driver and see whether he makes any more mistakes. So here we go for an onboard lap with Bobnova for Team What Team. So he makes his way down towards turn number 1. We won't be saying what gear as he heads into this one. He'll know where he wants to brake and what gear he wants to come down. That's second as he makes his way out of the first corner and now into Williams. Brings the car over to the right-hand side and will throws the car in. No brakes here, just a lift and coast, and gradually fill the front end hook up as he gets the power down there. Front engine rear wheel drive, of course, these cars, so therefore it's the balance of turning on the front wheels and power on the rear. Through the Moss S he goes, avoiding the curves, but flat out as he now heads in towards turn number 4 and onto the brakes, the outward curve. And you'll see here he intentionally goes very deep under braking, and it sets him up for a later apex line, and he's able to slingshot out the corner and power his way down the back straight. Now, heading down towards turn number 5, underneath the Lexus billboard, which many, of course, think is the sign that the Lexus RCF GT3 will be coming to iRacing at some point, although I think we could all dream, ladies and gentlemen. But for our Mazda driver here, coming down towards the braking zone, we look to his left-hand side for the 100-metre ball, goes onto the anchors and comes all the way down to first gear for the hairpin as he exits out over the blind rise, and over to the right he goes to open up Revolver. Here he comes through the corner, turns a little bit early, takes a lot of curb there, does Bobnova. He's not quite happy with his line as he comes into pipe. You can see how much it's upset him. But also, you may have briefly noticed there how much water is still standing on the curb there of turn number 7. But still, he can't worry about that anymore as he now gets ready for turn number 8, heading into Redmond, and here it's the winding uphill sequence of hairpins. The left hairpin followed by the right hairpin, and for Bobnova, get the car positioned in the middle of the road to open up Hobbs. And now it's all about being patient on the throttle, and once you see that exit tyre barrier start to fade away, that's when you get the power down. But now coming in towards Bike Night corner at turn number 10, all nice and smooth there, just lift and coast and throw the car through, and now onto the brakes for last quarter and go through turn number 11. A bit early on the apex there, Bobnova not looking settled behind the wheel of his car at the moment, heads to the time in line, and well, what's it going to be for his first lap on the board? And the answer is it's a 1 minute 50.384, but there's at least a second in that lap based on what we saw from that on board. But right now, Bobnova not happy at all, and I think he's just being caught out. He's wanting to hit those curves, but the problem is, and it's so difficult as a driver because you need a gauge of how wet it is, and now that he has that gauge, he knows he can't use the curbs in the middle section of the lap, or really the second half of the lap, be able to carry more speed. He's going to have to do it on purely the tarmac. But meanwhile, and Geng is continuing to set the benchmark there for pole position, a 1 minute 48.341. Absolutely stellar lap thus far. And well, can the 190 driver go even quicker? He is currently 4.5 tenths quicker than Simply Steve. Well, Simply Steve hoping here he can stay on that front row, and Knotavin a further 2.3 tenths behind. But in terms of drivers who've yet to get a lap on the board, and in fact, just noticing that Bobnova's lap time has been deleted. So therefore, it does look as though, unless I've misinterpreted somebody's time, which I may have to be fair, well, Bobnova's lap time in the end did not count, so it has been disallowed, and that will be for track limits. Although, to be fair, where it's been disallowed, your guess is as good as mine, ladies and gentlemen. But as he heads on around, well, we do see Corn Dog does improve there to 1 minute 50.251, and so right now, seeing what else he can do out there as he makes his way towards what will be turn number 2. But laps are starting to run out for a few of these drivers. Corn Dog definitely on what will be his penultimate lap, we believe, as Pancakes now moves up to 5th place with a 49.302. Some more time being found for every driver out there, which is great to see. Now, we do have 2 drivers who have returned to the grid after being on the grid for season 12, of which we do have Beaver out there in his wonderful, what is that I do believe, well, I want to say that is Synthwave Sunset Vibe livery machine. Definitely I'm feeling the vibes coming off the Privateer's number 10 car, and we look forward to seeing how he will get on. Of course, a driver who did very well to get to terms with the LMP2 machine for season 12, but back in a car that I think will suit him a little bit more. I think he does lean more towards less aero downforce orientated cars, and we look forward to what he's going to be able to do. But welcome back to grid for Beaver, and also we do have the return of Paper Bag. Good to see him back as well. He competed in the LMP2 Championship for season 12, and the number 8 driver was towards the back of the field there, and right now towards the back of the field it is number 8, the who can forget the lime green racing machine driver as he heads on around. Indeed a notable livery, well, one that you cannot miss as he looks to try and find a bit more lap time out there with a couple of laps still to go in his qualifying session. For Knotavin, he's completed all of his laps. He's in the pit lane now, having achieved 6th at best. So therefore, our drivers are all coming together. 15 drivers here, 14 have a lap to their name. Beaver's the only one who does not. And Bobnova, meanwhile, has improved, and this time the lap does stand on the time tower, and that is 4th place. But meanwhile, Nicolator, well, he raises the bar to 47.475. We're into the 47s, the quickest drivers out there, which is Nicolator and Geng. Geng immediately responds at 47.4. Beaver then responds with 46.9. What a lap there for Beaver. Well, right now, that may be a proverbial microphone drop if I've ever seen one in an MX-5. And well, number 10 driver puts himself right up there. Can anybody else respond? Nicolator, Dickinson, and Pancakes all in their final laps now. Pancakes heads on around, and well, what's it going to be here for Pancakes? Can he find a bit more time out there, or is he going to be staying in what would be 5th place at the moment if things stay as they stand? Well, we'll soon find out for the Privateer. Indeed, they're all pushing as hard as humanly possible, but that goes to show you just how exciting this qualifying session is going to be and how much is on the line for these drivers as he heads towards the time in line. But he's got a bit of time before he gets to the final timeline, as he does cross the timeline there for the first sector. He makes his way on with Simply Steve, just find some time. Moves up to second. Bobnova now into third at 47.312. Bobnova still does have 2 laps available. Simply Steve, wipers on there. That's not for rain falling in. We've got no rain on our cameras. That's for the spray of the car in front of him. That with the car of Etmi Dust there, who is using as what is his pace car in front. And Simply Steve right now still 1.5 tenths off a Beaver, but finding time. Getting a very excited edge towards this qualified session, no doubt about it. But Beaver's in the hot seat. Urko, meanwhile, all the way down in 13th place in the Rothmans livery machine. And, well, that last lap, not a happy one. He needs a lot more time out there for Bobnova Motorsport, because otherwise he'll be started towards the back of the field. And, well, I'm not going to say he can't fight his way forward, but it's not going to be easy given the class of the competition this season, plus also the nature of this circuit, whereby it just does not offer those overtaking opportunities to be as clear-cut as other circuits out there, whereby a lot of circuits, once you're on the inside and you've won the apex, you've got the move done. Here, not necessarily, because once you've won the apex, you've still got a hold on around the outside of the next corner, typically. But Nicolator goes to third, and he's on his cooldown now, and, well, that's his last lap put together, but Nicolator moves what was 2.5 tenths off a pole, and Dickinson slices his way between them all, and, well, only 200ths off of Beaver's pole time. Beaver now on to his 5th lap of the circuit. As we've got Pancakes in Bruin, he completes his final lap, moves to 8th place to 47.823 off camera. But we have got a couple of drivers still out there, including Paperbag, who's still trying to find a bit of time on his final flying lap of this qualified session. And hopefully we get to see him improve a little bit more. Always good to see a driver building up pace as time goes on. Not all these drivers, of course, have that much time to practice. Some do take an arrive and drive approach, and there's a bit of an informal arrive and drive championship going on, although we're not tracking the points on that. But I know a few drivers have said that they're more of an arrive and drive style rather than being able to practice in the week. But meanwhile, practice has paid off there for Simply Steve. He goes to provisional pole, and now he gives the draft there to Etmi Dust. Etmi Dust's final flying lap, but his provisional pole now 46.348 for Simply Steve. That's done on his own personal performance, plus also picking up the toe of Etmi Dust. And will we now see Etmi Dust launch his way out there? We jump aboard for what will be the remainder of his lap to find out. As Paperbag does improve there to a 51.620, finds 3 tenths, but still a little bit off the pace there in 15th place, but good to see him improving. But meanwhile, 4.5 minutes left in this qualified session for Etmi Dust as he heads onto the back straight. And right now, 9 is work to be done as Urko improves to 10th place, but 1 more lap available for Urko. This is not looking positive for the 33 drive off camera. I'm staying focused on what is on our camera right now. Etmi Dust, you can see that picking up quite the draft. That's going to be worth about 5 miles an hour in the long term, down at the back straight in towards the hairpin. But of course, if you pick up extra speed on the straight, you do have to be ready to brake a little bit earlier. It takes a lot of apex curve there, and Etmi Dust find out very quickly that apex has still got a lot of water flying down towards it. It is a bold or a banked corner. It's a camber corner, so the water will gravitate down towards the apex curb. But Etmi Dust makes no mistake in touching the curb at turn number 7, and as he makes way onwards, Simply Steve pulls aside. They're saying to Etmi Dust, right, you're on your own now. You don't need a slipstream for the final segments this lap. Indeed, having dirty air wash over the front of the MX-5. These cars have very little downforce on them compared to modern GT3 and prototype cars, but understandably the thought process here is the fact you don't want any extra dirty air through the tightest section of corners of the circuit, and you want to just be able to do this on your natural flow and rhythm. But comes in towards the final quarter, and as he does so, what's it going to be here for Etmi Dust? Does he find more time? He has got purple in sector 2. That's predominantly with regards to the back straights. That slipstream has helped him out as he comes towards the time in line. I wonder just how much that mistake at turn number 5 is going to cost him. Well, it puts him third. So Etmi Dust up into the second row of 46.526. But I suspect that mistake has costed the chance to look out the front row alongside his teammate as Bobnova makes it a late imprint there to 5th place at a 46.928. So all these qualifying laps almost complete, ladies and gents. So we've got Urko coming on through for his final qualifying lap here. Well, to complete it, we should say. He's currently in 10th place. He's on a personal best. All of his sectors, but he gets it wrong out the final corner. And Urko's into the barrier there. Oh, goodness me. And for Urko, what was looking to be a lap that could have put him around 6th place, suddenly it's all back in the pit lane in bits. So for Urko, 10th place is the furthest he will go. Bobnova's called it down. 5th is the highest he will go in this session. And Beaver, meanwhile, on his final flying lap here, just taking it nice and easy at the moment. And, well, what's it going to be as he heads towards the line? Well, in fact, he hasn't been taking it easy. Personal best in sectors 1 and 2. And as he comes out the final quarter, can he find a way to dethrone Simply Steve? He's had no draft to do this. This is all going to be without the slipstream. This will be under his own pace and volition. And the answer to that question is going to be, it's pole for Beaver, 56.053. And as the checker flag starts to come out of this qualified session, Beaver, well, he turned up a little bit late to this season, but I can tell you one thing, for his debut round of this season, Beaver right now is making a huge statement there. And that is a 46.053. 3 tenths faster than what anybody else has been able to achieve. And as he makes his way back to the pit lane, taking, of course, the cut through there for the club circuit, well, Beaver absolutely on top of things in qualifying. But, of course, qualifying is just one lap, and we've got 20 minutes of racing followed up by 40 minutes of racing here in the midst of playing back due to Florida Heatstroke Grand Prix round at the Okayama International Circuit, and understandably we could see many a driver contest Beaver unless he can make an early break, which is not impossible. We saw it at Tsukuba for drivers, and we could see it again. But as Bobnova heads towards the timeline here, well, we believe his laps are all done and dusted. He won't be allowed to put any more laps together. Indeed, he can practice all the way to the end of this qualifying session, but he's just not allowed to essentially achieve any more qualified times, or nothing will be registered. Well, that is qualifying complete, ladies and gentlemen. And as we look back to the pit lane, biker pilot there in the surprise Pikachu face, MX-5, the meme, of course, from the original Pokemon anime, Japan being the home of anime and indeed the likes of otaku culture, to name a few aspects. Well, we can see biker pilot there taking 30th place in the qualified session. He won't be too pleased about that, but he's normally a quicker driver under race conditions than he is in qualified conditions, so expect him to gradually move his way forward over time. But what a qualifying session we've had, ladies and gentlemen, here for round number 3 of Season 13 of the Just 2 Idiots Championship Series, our MX-5 season, and it is a maiden pole position for Beaver on his debut for this season at 1 minute 46.053, 3 tenths faster than anybody else, and we believe, don't quote us on this, but we believe that lap from Beaver was out of slipstream as well. A very impressive lap if so. Well, even an impressive lap, he did pick up the toe. And, well, Beaver absolutely leading the way, with Simply Steve joining on the front row, and Simply Steve's teammate Let Me Dust starting third, just ahead of Dickinson there on the grid. But the gap between them, a sizable 4 tenths there, but it shows you the power of the draft, with Bobnova only a further 6 thousandths behind, starting 5th ahead of Nicolator. Some sizable gaps in the field here in qualifying today. Perhaps to be expected given how technical this circuit is, and also the weather has definitely played its role, as we show the weather conditions there on the right hand side of your screen. It's a relatively cool day here, but the humidity is exceptionally high at 82%. So therefore, ladies and gents, with qualifying complete, well, it's time to make our way to the grid for the first of our 2 races. But who exactly is going to kick things off with a bang in the sprint? It's time to find out. And so, as our drivers make the way onto the grid, this will line up for the first of our 2 races here in the midst of playing back due to Florida Heatstroke round number 3 for Season 13 of the Just 2 Idiots Championship Series, brought to you by iRacing, and the rain begins to fall. Well, it may be all a change the order, as our drivers now need to think about whether they go to wet tyre or not, but Beaver will be the very first to take them on the adventure on towards wet conditions, potentially wet that is, and have to try and do the pathfinding as he starts to pole the privateer. He'll be joined at the front row of the grid by Simply Steve, a speed squad, and his teammate Let Me Dust follows up behind, with the 2 working together very well in qualifying to try and look out that front row. They almost did it, but unfortunately it was mission aborted when Beaver took pole. Still, for Emmy Dust, it's 3rd place, and the Norwegian driver will be joined at that 2nd row of the grid by Dickinson, who puts together a strong qualifying performance. He's back right up there, and we do see from 4 tenths between them, it was only a grand total of 600 between Dickinson and Bobnova, the man who impressed in his debut at Tsukuba. Again, what team driver put himself right back onto the podium once again here today. Nicolator takes 6th on the grid for Bobnova Motorsport, and he'll be pleased to be inside the top 6, and wary of the fact that he does have a 2.5 tenths gap to Geng for Abicula, and Geng, who looked very impressive in the early stage of the qualifying. As the circuit got dry, his pace started to fall off, so these wet conditions may suit Geng. We'll have to wait and see how he can conquer them. Pancakes, a season best qualified performance thus far, starts in 8th ahead of Corn Dog for Bad Math Simsport, but it's all added up for Corn Dog. He's looking quite happy on that 5th row, and he'll be in the company of Urko, who rounds off the top 10 for Bong Life Motorsport. Outside the top 10, we do see there starting in what will be 11th place, Knotavin for Night Racing, and what a difficult qualifying session for Knotavin, no doubt about it. But again, we do know Knotavin, if he doesn't qualify well, as we saw in an LMP2 in Season 12, do not rule him out. He will normally find his way through the field little by little. Cat Lady joins him on that 6th row for playing race cars, 3 tenths behind, and 3 tenths ahead of Biker Pilot for 3.8 Racing. Then we do have Garlic Dog, Cat Lady's teammate, line up directly behind him in 14th place, but ahead of Paper Bag, who completes our qualifying order. But ladies and gentlemen, with that, the formation lap is about to get underway. It is, of course, a short formation lap here today. We don't do the entire circuit. We begin the formation lap from the run in towards the turn 5 hairpin, but rest assured of the fact that our drivers will have a bit of time to get those tyres warmed up. as they all make their way away. And it's lovely to see, of course, all the cars onto that grid, all 15 of them. And you may be sat there thinking right now, when we've got grids of 20, 30 cars, well, to be fair, MX-5s, they are the staple club and national level racing around the world. And even if you only have 10 of them on the grid, it is always exciting, as we do see some rain out there on some of our cameras. And the rain falling in different patches right now, but this is definitely going to make this circuit slippery. And well, I wouldn't be surprised if everybody has gone to the wet tyre. They do have a wet compound and a dry compound, and well, they'll be on that wet compound here, so everyone tries to pump as much heat into their tyres as possible. Beaver there right now absolutely dancing, and well, hopefully he's not been watching too much Initial D recently, because otherwise he may have Dancing Queen going inside his head, if anybody remembers the good old Eurobeat song. And indeed, I've only really recently been re-watching Initial D, and right now I'm definitely going to have to try and avoid, to quote, too many beams out it, or perhaps I'll throw some out there for those of you who are anime fans. But either way, in the home of anime, we're about to get underway, because of Beaver, as he makes his way down for the last couple of quarters, the safety car will pull him in, and it will be to Beaver to get us underway for 20 minutes of racing. And it's lights out, away we go, go for Beaver as he roars down towards turn number 1. And here it's a journey of the unknown as they make their way to opening break-ins over the first time. 3 wide almost there as Let Me Dust looks one way, Simply Steve the other. But as they all come through the opening corner here, all drives safely through. A few fishtails there from drivers. Everyone just trying to find the grip levels right now. But as we see there, that's going to be Knotavin making his way past Pancakes around the outside. Up into 9th already is Knotavin. He's making some quick progress here. But right now, for these drivers, early progress, well, you've got to be able to temper it in. This is not going to be an easy race, but Beaver's already bolted away, coming up into Atwood Curve. As behind them, Geng meanwhile trying to put some pressure on here versus Dickinson for 4th place. Got change there, Nicolator moving ahead. What was Knotavin to hold on to 7th place, as Knotavin battling around the outside of Corn Dog. Can he hold on to 8th place here as Corn Dog tries to put up the fight? But onto the back stretch they go, and this is going to be all about now. Have you got the right toe? Have you got the side draft? Oh, which Dickinson trying to go around the outside of Simply Steve. And in fact, Simply Steve and Eppy Dust have swapped places. That's happened at Atwood Curve. So therefore, now Simply Steve has to go very defensive here, but Dickinson goes high and round the outside. That's giving him the inside of Revolver. And indeed, that's going to be a 6-shooter of a move as he goes in towards the left-hander. But behind, Geng there now, trying to put some pressure on here in the similar coloured car in terms of the base white paint, but definitely not the Sakura Blossoms on it as he looks up the inside of versus Simply Steve. That's not going to work out there. And in the end, Simply Steve is able to hold his line as they get ready to go into the switchback hairpin of Redmond, followed by Hobbs. Onto the brakes they go, and there is Bobnova right now trying to put pressure on to Geng. And Bobnova losing 1 place since the start, but to be fair, he hasn't really fallen away from the lead group. And now as they come towards the end of the lap, you can see Paperbags at a good start, getting ahead of Garlic Dog as well, and the pace is coming through for Paperbag as the racing goes on. Expects his pace definitely to be top 10 worthy towards the end of this race. He's going to evolve it as it goes on, and sometimes following another car helps you unlock a lot of pace. You suddenly see what everyone else is doing, even though if you can't see their gear shifts, you can always listen out for the gear shifts, and gear shifts, and unnecessary ones, make a huge difference in these Mazda MX-5s. But as they roar the way on towards another lap, going on to lap number 2, it's Beaver who leads, followed by Empty Dust, then Dickinson completes your top 3. The leaders right now do have a 1.4-second gap to Simply Steve, who sits in 4th place, ahead of Geng, followed by Bobnova, then Nicolator, then it's Knotavin, Corn Dog and Pancakes. They complete your top 10, with Corn Dog having to go defensive once again versus Pancakes, who looks around the outside for Sim City Racing, and right now can't quite find the move there as the car slides a little bit wide. And well, definitely this circuit right now, whilst we've already had a small splash of rain, it's been enough, I think, to make those wet tyres definitely a worthwhile investment. I can't imagine anybody on slicks right now be holding it together. We have Urko running best the rest at 11th place, ahead of Cat Daddy, followed by Biker Pilot, and there's Paperbag and Garlic Dog who complete your running order. But of course, plenty more laps to come here in this first race of the day. And remember, this is a 20-minute race, after which we have a 40-minute race, which is our top 8 inverted feature. But looking up to Corn Dog here. As you can see, right in the middle of the camera shots, we've got a bit of battle in the foreground. And with the fact the foreground is Simply Steve holding off Geng, but then Corn Dog and Pancakes, well, there's going to be Pancakes trying to look for the move on the inside, but as he then goes to the outside for Revolver, again, being shown the fact that one inside line is an outside next corner, and he's going to go around the outside all the way through Piper, but when he runs that wide onto the gravel, all he's going to do is lose places because Urko squeezes up the inside, and will take that in 10th place off Pancakes or Willie here as they make their way onwards. The rain falling onto the camera, and as they make them to break, Urk on the inside here for Redmond. It's going to be Pancakes on the outside. Can he keep it together to get the inside of Hobbs? And the answer is going to be yes, he can. Can he get it stopped in time now? He can as well. So for Urko, he's going to need a really good exit out of here if he wants to fight this into White Knight corner. And the answer is going to be no, he won't. He's going to fall back in. But meanwhile, not falling back, and if anything, breaking away at the front. 2 laps complete now, and Beaver open up an absolute incredible gap. 1.3 seconds here, head of Epby Dust, who is picking up pace on the straights. Understand he's still got the distant toe of Beaver's car, but in the corners right now, Beaver is in a world of his own. But looking further back, Knotavin here looking for a move on Nicolator, trying to get into 7th place here, and we started in 11th. It was a difficult qualifying session, but as we said earlier on, if Knotavin has a difficult day in qualifying, expect him to get increasingly quick in the race, and he's doing exactly that as he goes round the outside and just gets that move done. And now Nicolator tucks in behind. But from their battle, we've got another battle building here. It's the fight for 2nd place. There's Dickinson on the inside for SimCity Racing. The Privateer team versus Epby Dust, and the Speed Squad driver here on that outside line. Will he get the better run off the corner? He's got a longer run. Now Beaver trying to give the toe to both drivers here as that rain really starts to fall. And well, this is going to cause the circuit to evolve differently now. We have had a circuit that had a little bit of an update of rain, but now, of course, with the rain starting to fall quite heavily at certain points of the circuit, that's going to make it a harder circuit. It will take the pace out the lap, and any rubber that has been planted on the track surface will be gradually washed away. So the grip levels will drop, and this becomes even harder. And will we see Beaver be able to maintain his lead, or could we see it become a bit of a slip and slide story? As meanwhile, Dickinson runs wide, gets it all wrong, and well, as he brings himself back onto the road, for Dickinson it's all gone very wrong there, and he's going to have to try and get himself back together as quickly as he can. We're going to replay that very shortly, but Dickinson there exiting stage left and rejoining just in front of Nicolator, but Knotavin, who cleared Nicolator, well, he's down to 6th place there. Knotavin 5 places up, given the fact that Dickinson's handed over a place to him. Can Knotavin get onto the podium at this race? That rain really is starting to fall towards the back end of the circuit. Biker Pilot and Paperbag do try a good little scrap for 13th place. Paperbag 2 places up, and in the end, Biker Pilot as much as he waited to hold that inside line. Paperbag beat him on the brakes there, beat him on bravery, really is the theme. And a lovely move there from Paperbag to move into 13th. But still, that rain falls, there's plenty of time, and therefore this race is going to evolve lap after lap as Beaver goes on to lap number 4. And as he does so, well, we take a look back, ladies and gents, at some of the big moments in the opening at 6 minutes of this race, as we take a trip back in time and take a look at how it all started first and foremost. Now, as we did go green flag racing under relatively drier conditions and sunnier conditions, you may say, although a little bit of rain there falling onto our camera on the run into turn 1, with a brief bit of drizzle. Beaver got us going quite late. He decided to take the field green flag racing. I think a smart move there as the field fanned out into 4 wide, but Bobnova in the end, well, could not find a way through it. And on that inside line, actually had to back off and allow Dickinson to sweep round the outside. So Dickinson was quite the opportunist there as Bobnova thought about the inside, but I think that was also to just cover off and keep him safe. Corndog there making sure to pass Knotavin to hold on until he went a bit too wide out of turn number 2 and suddenly out of Williams Bend. Well, to be frank with you, it was Corndog who did not quite pick up the momentum as he made his way through Bosses, and saying Knotavin was able to fight him back into Atwood Curve. But Urko and Pancakes behind, they also had a good little battle as Knotavin swept round the outside of what was Corndog and was able to gain the draft on the run down towards the hairpin. Simply Steve having to do battle straight away with Dickinson after losing out for the first couple of corners, then acts as a bit of a rear gunner. And of course, we saw all that excitement, and on lap number 2, there was even more excitement. A bit of an error for Pancakes, and this was Pancakes coming out of turn number 5 in towards 6 on that outside line, batting the Corndog, and in the end carried in a bit too much speed for comfort, and the car understeering wide. Thankfully, he was able to power through the gravel and not have the car go around, but it enabled Urko to get on the inside of him. And then on lap number 3, we had a bit of an incident as well, but not before. We did have a bit of a brilliant battle between Dickinson and Epby Dust. And this was between the pair of them as they made the way up in towards Atwood Curve and onto the brakes where Dickinson went all in for that move. And in the end, did he get it done for 2nd place? And the answer was not quite, because of course they then had a drag race which ended in this happening to Dickinson, coming out of the hairpin and in towards Revolver Bend. And we're on the outside, got ahead, carried too much speed into the corner. The rear of the car let go with the rain falling, and Dickinson doing very well there to avoid the tyre barrier literally by a hair's width. Otherwise, that could have been over retirement for him, but just about kept it on the road, kept it together and got it back onto the road. As we also did see a bit of battling, of course, between Paperbag and Biker Pilot. And this was only moments later towards the end of lap number 3, and this was Paperbag making his way up the inside of Biker Pilot in towards Redmond. And onto the brakes he went there, number 8 driver. blazing hot brake discs already, really abusing those brakes, but to be fair, you've got to abuse them to get a move done, and that was absolutely brilliant there from Paperbag to go around the outside and take that 13th place. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's back to your live racing. And as we do come back, there's still plenty of time left. We have just lost the best part of about 2.5 minutes to replays. But to be fair, we come right back into the thick of the fighting. And this is now live as we do see Pancakes battling with Corndog. Corndog trying to go around the outside to hold position. And Corndog, after a bit of an adventurous start, has now been forced down the order. The rain has actually stopped a little bit. And well, understandably, after what was that quick deluge of rain, we've now got a circuit that once again goes to being quite wet, but a drying circuit. Albeit with the amount of cloud that we do have over the circuit, plus also ambient temperature, given we do have the best part of around about 69 degrees Fahrenheit out there, which is nice, well, that means this circuit is not going to dry that quickly, and it really will be down to our drivers trying to put as much heat into the tarmac as possible and into their wet tyres in order to help dry it up. So this is going to be one of those circuits that's now going to evolve back to being a quicker circuit, but it'll feel like a bit of an ice rink in just how tricky it will be to find that pace. Definitely be able to tell you about that as we ride aboard here with the Bobnova motorsport machine with the Rothmans dedicated livery, and we're your 33 driver right now and trying to find his way through, trying to get to the top 10. Ideally, he wants to go hunting after Nicolator, who is 7 seconds up the road. But look at this, a drag race down towards turn number 1, and on left here picture of that is going to be Corndog, be on Pancakes on the inside, and Urko says, right, we can make another one out of that. And well, in the end, Corndog has no resistance to offer as Pancakes overcooks the corner into turn 1. Brakes very late, and it almost goes into the gravel trap. Has to go defensive versus Urko now, and we're going through Williams. This is definitely going to feel a bit punishing for Pancakes. He drifts his way out to turn number 2. Well, here's Urko, Corndog, and Cat Daddy all queuing up behind, but Pancakes right now find himself under huge pressure under braking. Urko looking to the inside into Atwood. It's not going to quite work out there for Urko. He's just too far back. But then again, Pancakes is going to go very deep. But a lovely line there on the exit from Pancakes. Actually converts going deep into a line. Finds a lot of grip out there, which you wouldn't normally find on the very edge of Atwood Curve. And suddenly Pancakes is actually able to open up that gap to 6 tenths and feel very safe for Urko, who's got Cat Daddy a lot closer by comparison. And Corndog with it. There's Cat Daddy fanning out, trying to see the inside of the hairpin and thinks about going all in for a move here. I wondered if he was going to send it from downtown. He almost did on Corndog, but Corndog saw it coming and at last moment decided, no, it's not going to happen, so I'll just simply close the door shut. But meanwhile, from the back of the field, towards the very front of the field, Beaver right now 3.5 seconds ahead. And can anybody slow this man down? Beaver right now definitely enjoying the synthwave machine as he makes his way onwards. And as he heads on towards lap number 7 shortly, Etney Dust is the leading challenger in second place. With the best part of 3.5 seconds behind, with Simply Steve third ahead of Knotavin and Dickinson. But they're all very tight here, with Bobnova encroaching on the back of the group for the battle for second through to 6th. And the second behind them is Gang and Nicolator. While further back, Cat Daddy and Corndog still fighting. We've also had a change between Biker Pilot and Paperbag. Biker Pilot has got himself ahead of Paperbag off camera. We might get a replay of that in due course. But they're still fighting over 13th place. Good to see them fighting, as Garlic Dog, unfortunately, not quite as comfortable in these conditions. And the best part of around about 2 seconds off the pace at the moment. But the Old Spice try here for playing race cars. It's not always easy to drive in these conditions and just get into the finish line without making any major mistakes. Had a huge off. That in itself is a win. But here's Gang and Nicolator. Gang in the white machine. Look into the inside-outside line coming in towards Bosset. But now Nicolator will have the inside into Atwood. What can Gang do with this? Does he go all the way around the outside? Does he switch it back? We can see there quite a bit of standing water on the inside of the upslope of Atwood. He avoids that. Nicolator has to take it on a defensive line. That causes him to lose a bit of traction. And Gang gets very close here as they make the way down the back stretch. Looking for an opportunity to make a move, and in the draft here, surely he's got to be thinking about this. There's no question about it. Within a 10th, looking to the inside as he goes into the braking zone for hairpin. At this point, Gang's going to break a lot later there, but he goes too deep, and as he does so, well, he manages to keep it on the road, but Nicolator simply says, I saw that one coming, Gang, and Gang says, we'll try this on for size. He throws himself back up the inside into Revolver, then they go too wide. Nicolator very sideways there coming out to Revolver, keeps it on the road. I don't know how, that man's got car control, and if he catch a car like that, he should consider playing baseball or cricket. He'd be brilliant at fielding. But meanwhile, as he brings it back together, Gang in the end, I think mesmerised by that. Well, he's repassed there by Nicolator for 7th place. Meanwhile, going back to the fight for second, or the traffic jam for second now. Although Emi Dust not doing his best impression of a truly trainer, I can promise you that. But he's definitely got his teammate Simply Steve acting as rear gunner here for Speed Squad. And then you've got Knotavin for Night Racing, Dickinson there as well for SimCity Racing, and Bobnova all queuing up behind. And all right now waiting for an opportunity to attack, but that's not going to be easy. Meanwhile, Pancakes and Urko side by side here coming into my light corner. That's going to be Urko up the inside there. Does not hesitate, pulls the trigger on that move just like that. And well, the 33 driver here finds himself on the inside and gets that move done very quickly. But Knotavin up the inside here is Simply Steve. He decides, right, we're going to break the deadlock for the podium. And Simply Steve, will he defend here in towards Williams? The answer is yes. Can Knotavin hold it around the outside to complete the move? May be able to here. They come off of that left-hander, and it will be Knotavin up in the third place. Simply Steve not fighting that, perhaps as hard as he could have, but I think right now for Simply Steve, it's more of a game plan here of stay with the leaders in this group rather than fight too soon, because we've still got 6 minutes to go. And of course our drivers will have members of the team on the pit wall calling out to them, telling them what weather's coming, and we have got more rain. A sprint to the rain just to top up the circuit coming, and suddenly this could really go back in the way of the Speed Squad drivers. They do seem a bit more comfortable in the increasingly wet conditions compared to the dry conditions that Knotavin seems to be quite set on, but he's getting to grips with the wet at the moment. It's Knotavin, and now looking one way then the other versus Emi Dust looking around the outside. He's going to try and go for it here, but Emi Dust gets his elbows out. Meanwhile Dickinson and Simply Steve go toe-to-toe. Dickinson trying to go around the outside and squeeze Simply Steve onto the apex. That's not going to work. And Simply Steve in the end holds onto that 4th place. But great battle between them. Dickinson and Bobnova queue up behind. And Emi Dust right now hold onto that 2nd place. But the gap to Beaver, well, that has almost doubled over the last couple laps from 3 seconds to 5.5 seconds. And that's simply because the amount of fighting that's going on behind at the moment, of behind Beaver for that 2nd through to 6th place combination. Well, every corner fault is going to cost time in the dry, let alone in the wet, even more so. But that's gone wrong for Urko. Oh no, it's all gone around with the Rothman's driver. He tries to get turned around, then realises the fact that as he does so, he's got to throw it off the circuit. He's got more drivers coming, so he can't quite get it turned the way he wanted to. And Urko gets out the way there, 10 out of 10 for effort and also for awareness. And as he now gets still back up to speed, falls to the back of the field. We'll try and get a replay of that when we can. But now as we go on to lap number 8, well, Emi Dust right now, feeding more pressure with the Knotavin. Here they go, down towards turn number 1. We look back for the rear of the Speed Squad 24. Knotavin trying to go around the outside here on the brakes. That's not going to work initially, but he tries to set up the switch back here. And look at that. Knottavin's car control absolutely pixel precise as they come through that left-hander at turn number 2. And right now for Knotavin trying to sweep it round to the inside. He goes that late apex. He gets it behind. Oh, goodness me, that's Dickinson. Dickinson goes sliding off to the road and somehow, some way, gets it stopped on the gravel there. Doesn't hit the tyre barrier, but hold the phone on that because we've got even more fighting. Now it's out between Emi Dust and Knotavin. Knotavin in the end carries too much speed. Touching the grass. He keeps on the road just about. And this rain right now really visceral here. It's come back in full force. This circuit right now, it's turned into a bit of a lake here. Well, I don't know what the nearest lake to the circuit is in Mimosaka, but I'll tell you one thing right now. We're creating a new artificially made one here today at the Okayama course. But as they come down, Knotavin looking at the inside of Emi Dust right now after a near miss there. And I think there was a bit of elbows out, and Knotavin just slightly touched the white line on the exit of what was Moss Curve into Atwood. Well, he's going to go up the inside there, and Emi Dust has no response, but Knotavin very sideways. It goes round. Was there contact? And if so, was it contact after Knotavin already lost the rear of the car, and it was contact that could not be helped? It may be, but Knotavin avoids the barrier there. They're all very good at avoiding the tyre barriers. Well, right now, Emi Dust retakes 2nd place, but there's a bit of a question mark over it, although to be fair, I think it might have been an error for Knotavin trying to get that power down. Will Nicolator moves back into 3rd ahead of Bobnova, Simply Steve and Geng. Knotavin and Dickinson have fallen off of this lead group for now, and Geng has suddenly arrived back in amongst it all over again. So, well, a couple of drivers get ejected out of it, and suddenly more get put back into it. We also some fighting further back, of course, with Biker Pilot still hold off Garlic Dog, and Paybag making a clear break there for what is now 12th place for Urko Spin, upgraded all those drivers in terms of position. But let's very quickly see if we can get some replays, ladies and gentlemen, of what exactly happened there, including what was a huge moment for Knotavin. So this was the culmination of the battle between these two drivers, and Knotavin came out of the corner. He did lose the rear there by looks of things. The camera cuts just as he really starts to lose it, but I think Knotavin just lost the rear as he did clear the hairpin. Can we get the blimp camera on that potentially? Would that be able to help us out? Not quite. That's not the best visibility there, but can we get another angle? Yes, we can, and there's the proof of the pudding. So Knotavin tried to get the power down, but the rear let go, and unfortunately he did ping-pong himself onto the side of Emi Dust's car, and at that point Emi Dust was committed to line as well. They would make contact, but that will be a racing incident between them. The stewards will not be having to go about that one, simply because of the fact when it goes wrong, of course, and you lose control in the wet, you're suddenly a passenger in your car. But we did have that, and we had this for Dickinson, a huge boat for Dickinson on lap number 9. And this was going through turn 1 and 2. He was at the time battling the course with Bobnova and Simply Steve. Made his way to the corner as he did so. Mounted the curb, hit the side of Simply Steve. The two got caught to each other. Everyone put their brakes on. And that explains what happened, but also why he didn't go to the timeout. They all did exceptionally well there to slow their cars down. Well, Dust there was contact with Knotavin in towards Atwood Curve. And we saw the outcome at the back of that battle for full place with Nicolay to getting ahead of Bobnova, Simply Steve, Geng and Dickinson as a result of what happened. But with that, it's back to your live racing, ladies and gentlemen. And as we do come back, well, the rain stops. 1.5 minutes is still on the clock, however, and we've still got more of a story to tell here. No more replays to the end now, ladies and gentlemen, because understand we want to see how it all concludes. And right now, well, for Beaver on his 10th tour on the circuit under race conditions, well, the number 10 driver here, he'll be putting an 11th lap together very shortly with a minute left to go. That will be the final lap of this race. Beaver right now completely in control. There is no question about it. As the white flag waves, he goes onto his final lap of this sprint race, and Beaver on his return to the racing for this season, looking very much on course for a maiden win. But meanwhile, who will be second? Well, Dust holds on right now by 1.2 seconds ahead of Nicolator, and it's likely to be the way it goes potentially. Then we do see Bobnova, Simply Steve and Knotavin. Speaking of Knotavin, he's fighting with Geng. He's got a nose ahead here towards turn number 1, and after what happened at turn number 5 on the previous laps, well, right now Knotavin just seeing if he can come back here and gain a little bit of consolatory points. Remember, of course, it's the top 8 that gets inverted to set the grid for our feature race, so he would be starting in 3rd place for the next race if things were to finish as they currently stand, and that's not bad, and it puts him right towards the front of the starting order. Geng, understandably feeling the same as well. He may have lost a place then, lost a couple of points, but the flip side of the coin is he gains a bigger opportunity because he starts on the front row for the feature race. Should he finish 7th, he'll be 2nd place, and Dickinson right now would be the pole sitter for our 2nd race a day in a Mazda that definitely has seen better days with regards to that front bumper. Alto was a bit of an error in towards Williams. I think he outbroke himself into the corner, hit the curb, went on a collision course with the machinery of Simply Steve, but they did very well to make sure it did not end up with a massive domino effect, essentially, which is what could have happened if they'd not been able to keep the cars under full control. But Pancakes, his teammate, follows on behind right now. The two privateers, they're not an official team entry for SimCity Racing, but they do run the same liveries, so we do believe they're racing as a privateer team. And as they make the way up through right now, your 64 driver just keeping his head down to the finish. But as he does so, Biker Pilot still ahead of Garlic Dog, but chased after Paper Bag in the lime green machine as the battle for 12th place begins to build up once again right at the very end. But it looks as though that may happen right at the end of the lap, because as we head back up the order, there's Dust, and Nicolator will be just behind him and feeling the pressure of Bobnova. But for this man, there's only been one bit of pressure, and that's it to keep it on the road, because for Beaver, it was an absolutely brilliant pole lap at the end of qualifying, and he's going to convert it into a superb maiden winner season. Beaver wins in race number 1 of the day here at the Okayama International Circuit for round 3 of the championship, and it will be Dust who comes at home in 2nd place, just ahead of Nicolator, who completes the podium, and Bobnova in the end missed out the podium, takes 4th. Then it'll be Simply Steve in 5th. Double points there for Speed Squad inside the top 5. Win the Knotavin in 6th place ahead of Geng. And then Dickinson will come through to complete your top 8, and we'll take pole position for the feature ahead of Pancakes and Cat Daddy, who complete that top 10. And then we will see Corn Dog come home in 11th place there. Decent performance for the 08 driver, but understandably he wanted a lot more from this one. Paperbag in the end does hold off Biker Pilot. Well done to Paperbag for doing so. A great battle between these two, and in the end the driver who looked to be quite off pace in qualified, he's definitely found his pace in the race. Garlic Dog takes 14th place, and then we do have one more drive to finish this race, ladies and gentlemen. He's had a spin or two, but to be fair, the grid on his face hasn't left him, and he's going to keep it together to the very end. It is none other than Urko there for Bog Life Motorsport, who makes way home 15th out of our 15 starters, all on the lead lap, and that completes our first race. But what a race, and Beaver looking absolutely unstoppable as we now get ourselves set for the 2nd race of the day. But as we do, well, the rain comes back coming into our warm-up session, and well, it does look as though here we're getting a complete topping up of the circuit, and in doing so, well, that's only going to make things even more exciting for race number 2. But before we get to it, of course, we do have those race results, provisional for race number 1 to bring to you. And well, as we can see, after 20 minutes of racing for the first of our 2 races in the Omega-sponsored Mr. Playing Back due to Florida Heatstroke round number 3 of the MX-5 season 13 of the Just 2 Idiots Championship Series at iRacing, Beaver taking that win in the end by 9.4 seconds ahead of Dust. The privateer looked absolutely untouched when qualified, and in those challenging conditions, well, he definitely looked to have the pace advantage. To be fair, That gap of 9.4 seconds can be attributed somewhat to the batting that went on for second place, not just Beaver's pace, although to be fair, he was a step ahead, and Emi Dust in the end was the next driver to take a step onto the podium. The speed squad driver there, a brilliant drive from him, and he'll be absolutely pleased about that, given the fact in terms of how his results stand this season, it's his best performance so far, and can he make it another podium in race number 2? We'll wait and see. Nicolator makes his way back onto the podium once again, and in an intriguing twist, Nicolator finally takes a sprint podium for this season, having only taken podiums in the feature races so far, and it has been a second and a third, and he finds the third place spot in his first sprint race podium. Behind the Bobnova Motorsport drive, it was a further 2 attempts to Bobnova, Team What Team, not quite able to recreate the victory, or indeed the podiums from Tsukuba so far, but right in the hunt for them, and we look forward to see what he can do in this next race. Simply Steve taking 5th there for Speed Squad, in a race which saw his pace slip as Empty Dust pace built, and Simply Steve had to act as rear gunner for the majority of it, particularly when fended off Knotavin. The Night Racing driver who was fighting so hard for second, where it was that slip coming out of turn number 5 that sent him spinning on the round, and unfortunately for the Canadian driver, current to 6th, but not what he wanted it to be. Gang for Orbicular takes 7th place. And in doing so, well, not quite the result he wanted, but he will be on the front row of the grid for race number 2. And Dickinson will be your pole sitter to the privateer, after also looking to be a promising chance for the top 5, with 8th place in the end. Just his privateer teammate of Pancakes there for Sim City Racing. He took 9th and starts there for race number 2. Cat only completed your top 10 for playing race cars, got himself down to the ground in the end, and picked up some of the pace. Had a corn dog there, and the Bambaf Simsport driver couldn't quite get things to add together the way he wanted them to in the end, after starting inside the top 10, but finishing just out of it, best dressed to 11th. It was the paper bag fight his way from 15th to 12th. The privateer fended off 3.8 races Biker Pilot, and also playing race cars Garlic Dog and Urko 2 spins towards the end of the race, seeing himself finish in 15th place. But that was race number 1, as the rain falls here in the Okayama prefecture near Mimosaka City. We'll come up shortly. Will be race number 2, ladies and gentlemen. And what a first race we have had, with a circuit that looked to be relatively dry, only to have the rain come back at the start of the race, and the rain really came down as the race went towards its conclusion. And we did have a bit of an influencing factor with regards to how drivers were driving, but everyone started the race on the wet tyre, and I suspect the wet tyre is going to be the tyre to be on for race number 2. If not, well, I'll tell you one thing, ladies and gentlemen, you've won the lottery if I've got that wrong. But as the rain does fall, well, we're not too far away from going racing one more time today. And with us having 2 minutes before we do head to the grid, if you're sat there right now needing some liquid refreshment, if you're sat there right now thinking, I might need a toilet break, I'm on the verge of it, but can I hold it in? Well, don't force yourself to. Instead, go take that liquid refreshment, go take that toilet break, because when you head to the grid for race number 2 with us, I can tell you one thing, you will not want to miss a second of it. If the sprint race is any indication here, with a bit of rain sprinkling even more liveliness into the incredible race we've seen so far this season, and all our drivers being highly respectful of the way they've raced each other, no doubt about it, well, something tells me race number 2 is going to be absolute cinema if we did see a blockbuster of a race for race number 1. And with that, I'm going to heed my own words and make sure I take a big sip of water before we do go back to the grid. And we're water taken, so therefore we're all set and ready to go. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, our drivers are almost all set and ready to go. And what else did we learn from the sprint race? Well, one of the key things we did learn, of course, was the way the wet weather's re-evolved that racing line out there, whereby suddenly the inside of a lot of corners is not where you really want to be, particularly for Atwood and also for the hairpins. So turns 4 and 5 being on the outside line, actually the fast line, because the water flowing away from the outside, given the curvature and the sloping of the road surface. We also got to see the fact there is quite a prominent standing water line coming up through at Redmond into Hobbs. It turns 8 and 9 on the inside, but it's actually not too bad to drive on, and therefore drivers are able to use it. As long as they can keep the rear of the car settled down, they should be a-okay. We also saw in terms of pace, Bobnova gradually building as the race went on, so he's going to be one to watch out for in race number 2. But Beaver really the runaway lead, and we decided not to go out in this warm-up practice session, but instead stay in the pit lane and just keep an eye on the weather. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, they say take the weather with you. Well, we're going to take it with us into race number 2, because it is time for the 40-minute feature race. Who exactly will bring home the biggest points of the day by taking the win? Let's take a look, because it's time to find out as we head to the grid. And so as our drivers make the way to the grid for our second and final race of the day, this is how they'll all line up in the Mr. Plane back due to Florida Heatstroke feature race. It is Dickinson who takes the top 8 inverted pole position. He will be joined on the front row by Gang Verbicular. Both drivers will be quite eager to prove they can finish inside the top 5 and they'll pick up some big points, perhaps even finish on the podium, if not take the win. But Knotavin, he'll be itching for one thing and one thing only, and that'll be victory for night racing to extend his championship lead. Simply Steve takes 4th on the grid for the speed squad. Watch out for him, not the quickest driver out there, but definitely a firm defensive driver. And Bobnova starts on the 3rd row for Team What Team in the company of Nicolator for Bong Life Motorsport. Then in 7th, it's going to be Etmy Duff's the speed squad and your winner of race number 1, and that'd be none other than Beaver. And how quickly can we expect Beaver to come through the field? Or was all that pace in the sprint race a one-off and suddenly he finds himself in close and competitive competition? Pancake starts in 9th there, where he finished in the sprint, just ahead of Cat Daddy for playing race cars, and outside that top 10, in 11th place, it's Corn Dog for Bad Math Sim Sports, head of Paper Bag. Paper Bag will look to try and hold off Biker Pilot and Garlic Dog, who make up your 7th row for 3.8 Racing and playing race cars, and Urko for Bong Life Motorsport. Watch out for him. He'll be looking for redemption. He'll be looking to try and carve his way through the field. But that's how they line up. Our 15 drives once again, ladies and gentlemen. And as Dickinson eagerly pulls away before the safety car has pulled away, well, he won't get in trouble for that. And that'll be okay, but Dickinson there immediately, so eager to go green flag racing. And when we look to the blimp camera still as all the field gradually tiptoes its way away, well, he just wants to get some tyre temperature. They're on the wet tyres, but of course, with the wet track surface, they will try and pump that tyre temperature as quickly as they can. So that way they're all ready and set here for when we do go up to speed. And that run through turns 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the open lap could prove pivotal if you haven't got tyre temperature, or if you have, and also a bit of brake temperature would not lead you astray. But as Dickinson follows the automated pace car there, and indeed the rain has stopped falling. You can definitely see how wet this track surface is at the moment. Well, it's going to be 40 minutes here, which are going to be a lot about management. And these wet tyres as well, once they start to warm up, they can wear quite quickly. So that might be a fault. There may be a bit of a hunt for what will be standing water out on the circuit in order to keep those tyres nice and cool and extend their life. Well, for all that and plenty more, it'll be down to our drivers to see what exactly they can do. And now when we're looking at this man, Beaver, in the lovely livery machine as he heads on around, because of course, given his pace in race 1, is this going to be back-to-back victories? Will it be our first set of victories for him this season, or will it just be the one? Well, for all that and more, we're about to find out, ladies and gentlemen, because Dickinson makes his way down towards the final corner and gets ready to take us to the green. And it's lights and away we go. Dickinson goes early, he's allowed to, and as they roar the way down towards turn 1, it's a good start there for Dickinson to catch the field out, and as they make the way into the braking zone for turn 1, well, Dickinson with a comfortable lead already as they all head onto the anchors for the first time, and we'll see their few drivers getting nice and too wide, including other Simply Steve and Etmy Dust, the 2 teammates, and in fact, Simply Steve, I think, has lost out a little bit to Etmy Dust there, who's caught him napping slightly, but meanwhile, Cat Daddy tries to fight his way forward, and Cat Daddy up from 10th to 9th, getting clear of Pancakes there, as Beaver fighting hard with Nicolator. Nicolator losing a couple of places. Beaver right now up 1 as they come through, come in towards Atwood through Mosses, and well onto the brakes. They all come for the first time asking. This will be the hardest braking zone they've filled so far. And well, Corn Dog battling side by side with Paper Bag. Paper Bag having a good start, to be fair, trying to clear Corn Dog. And well, Paper Bag really feeling motivated right now. We love to see this from the number 8 driver. He's really come alive. And as they make the way down the back stretch, understanding Paper Bag is feeling confident. Meanwhile, front of field, there's Dickinson, but look who's behind him, emerging like a villain in the pantomime. It's none other than Knotavin who comes on out there, and well, everyone right now will be saying he's behind you, and Dickinson will definitely know he's behind him as they come in towards Revolver. But Gang hold on to that 3rd place, man, losing out to Knotavin in the run down the back straight, but he's not going to lose any more places for now as they all go single file, and towards the back of the group, well, there is Condog and Biker Pilot fighting hard over 11th place. Paybag has lost out a little bit, but I think that's all through the hairpin there. It's all back and forth change, and right now Paybag being relegated back even further behind Corn Dog, but it's not over for him yet. Meanwhile, Bobnova up the inside again. Lunged it. Meanwhile, Beaver showing his first signs of being a bit sideways there. Oh, goodness me, that's not going to work out. Free wide going into Hobbs, and in the end, Beaver completely backs off, getting his elbowed wide there by Simply Steve. I think there's more to it than meets the eye, and they're going to be free wide here into my night quarter. Surely not. No, in the end, Beaver and Gang back out there, let Nicolator take the inside line. So Nicolator, the ever the opportunist, and will steals that place away. Smart driving from him, no doubt about it. And as the end of lap number 1, we've got plenty more to come. Goodness me, a bit of a dramatic end to lap, but more to come as Pancakes into pit lane. Now, not quite sure what for. Is there damage to Pancakes' car? We'll find out in due course. But 1 lap down, plenty off in the distance. And Dickinson leads by 2.5 tenths ahead of Knotavin, followed by Bobnova 7 tenths behind. There's a 2.2 second gap to Simply Steve, who are right now holding on to full place, trying to break away from Nicolator, Beaver, Geng, Dust, and Cat Daddy. And then we do have 1.5 seconds back to Biker Pilot, who completes that top 10. Pancakes has left the pit lane. We believe it was a fast repair on the car, so therefore some damage picked up right at the start. We'll see if we can get some proof as to what exactly happened a bit later on in the show. But Corn Dog right now all over the back of Biker Pilot here, and you can see in the rear of the picture that is Urko trying to attack Paper Bag, but not quite working out, too far back to go for it. But from the back to the front, here's Knotavin versus Dickinson again. Looking for another opportunity, and at this point, when Knotavin within a 10th here, following the wheel tracks of Dickinson, who is any close at this point, it would be a merged together car, if you will. But I think right now, Knotavin just trying to work together with his rival. Simply Steve here finds Beaver on his inside. Oh, and there's contact between the two. Beaver came in. Simply Steve turned in there, and there's going to be a big question mark of whether it was a lunge or whether Beaver had already made the line before Simply Steve had got, well, not Simply Steve, before Nicola. It was Simply Steve, my apologies. We were right the first time I'd gone to turn into the corner. And if so, well, that might be deemed a racing incident for now between both drivers, given they've survived it. But I definitely think a bit of elbows out between them there, and, well, both of them will now know how the stage has been set between them. We'll have to wait and see which way it's going to go, as Beaver definitely feeling as though right now nobody wants to let him through, because they're all worried about the fact if he's able to get into lead, he may just run away with it. Of course, we'll see Nicolator there in 6th, just ahead of Dust a bit further behind. Dust slipping away, and Geng and Cat Daddy now starting to get a bit closer to him. As the sun comes out, and as quickly as it's gone away, it's come back, and, well, will this cause the circuit to dry up? Potentially, albeit if it causes it to dry up, it should not be at too rapid a rate of knots, but if it does really dry up that quickly, well, suddenly, will we see anybody duck into the pit lane for slicks towards the end of the race? I think your guess is going to be a no, as much as mine is a no, but of course, there's always a gamble to be had out there, as meanwhile, Knotavin risks it all on the inside here versus Dickinson. I mean, can he make it through first quarter to get the outside of Williams nicely done? Well, Dickinson's never going to let that go without a fight. Takes the inside of Williams in turn, but Knotavin has more space to play with here. But, of course, he has to avoid that exit curve. So slippery out there as Dickinson briefly touches it. And Knotavin does take lead this race. Lovely move there from Knotavin. And the Night Racing Dry now starts to try and open up a bit of a gap as Dickinson feeding the pressure of Bobnova. Although Bobnova not quite able to make the move there for Atwood, but definitely gleaming for a move. And if he can glean that move off his rival, he'll definitely try and take it. So I think right now they both feel as though they've got a bit of pace in Knotavin and Bobnova to make a bit of a break away. We'll have to wait and see where Dickinson's going to let them have it their way or not. Of course, it's one story to think he can make the break. It's another story entirely to think that it's not going to work out. But they make the way down, well, onto the braking zone. Bobnova there looking up the inside. Might be an attempted move here. He's going to go for it, Bobnova, but will he get it done? And the answer is going to be not quite in the end. He has a bit of oversteer, power oversteer there on the wet corner. And, well, Bobnova falls back into third place there, but definitely buried his fangs. But meanwhile, we've had it go a little bit wrong for Paper Bag. He's fallen down to 14th place. It was a bit of an instant on the previous lap. We'll get a replay of that when we can. You can see him there chasing after Garlic Dog with Urko 3 seconds up the road. Biker Pilot and the Surprise Pikachu Face Machine chasing after Corn Dog. And right now, definitely feeling as though it's definitely not Pika P, but more Pika as he tries to pick his way back through the field. And we'll have to see what he can do here versus the number 8, who's trying to hold on to that 10th place spot. 3 seconds up the road from there is Cat Daddy, still chasing after Geng by comparison. But looking to Beaver here, and right now, Beaver definitely eager to try and make a move with Nicolator getting close company. And we're right on board the dashboard of the number 10. A little bit of a slide wide, but here he goes then, the American driver getting closer and closer. Can he make this move happen? Looking potentially to the inside here, peeling on out. All in on the brakes goes Beaver, and well, this time there's not a touch between the two of them, unlike at the hairpin a couple of laps ago. They keep it a bit cleaner the turn this time, and I think both drivers respecting the fact there's a long race to go. They don't need to get their elbows out that soon. As meanwhile, well, Biker Pilot and Corn Dog there, and Biker Pilot makes his way past Corn Dog. I think very aggressive under braking, but he gets it done there, and right now, up in the 10th place. Cat Daddy is 4 seconds up the road. Can he help close the gap, or will Corn Dog and Urko make sure he doesn't and relegated back into a fight for 10th at best today? Will be up to the 3 drivers there. Of course, the saying goes, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, but do they want to be temporary friends here, or do they want to remain enemies? Well, based on the body language of Corn Dog's car, I think right now Corn Dog wants to continue the fight. Urko, meanwhile, just simply says, well, if you're going to break that late into Atwood, I'll just politely take that place off of you. But Biker Pilot gives the toe to Corn Dog there to get the two to fight each other, and right now Urko will not be very grateful for that, given the fact it means he'll be losing some straight line speed as they get ready for the braking zone. Here they coming down, Urko on the inside, Corndog on the outside, on the anchors, and Urko will slot his way in. Does he hold the position? Yes, he does, but Biker Pilot goes very wide there. Any wider than that, he'd be taking a trip to the weeds, but not quite. And Biker Pilot does hold into that 10th place, but Urko looks on the inside now. So Urko says, right, I've taken one, I'm going to take two now. Indeed, he's feeling as though he's getting a 2-for-1 special here today, given the fact it is the Amazon Prime Day sales this weekend. And indeed, this race going just before they started, I do believe. So really, he's trying to get an early offer in. But unfortunately, that early offer, he's too soon for it, and it hasn't quite worked out as Biker Pilot retakes the place. But meanwhile, Nicolator battling with Etme Dust here, and these two continue to fight, and I believe Dickinson's had a bit of a monks. He drops a long way down the order. We'll get a replay of that when we can. But Nicolator and Etme Dust 2 wide coming through last corner, but it won't be the last corner of this race. It'll be the last corner of the lap. And well, Etme Dust on that outside better line, and the distant drafts are Simply Steve. Nicolator here trying to swim upstream like a trout, but unfortunately he's going to tuck back in. Look back on board with the Bong Life Motorsport number 5. Well, he looks the inside. A little too far back, however, to go for this move at this time. But his fault, of course, will be he might be able to get involved a little bit later on. I'm about to see what his game plan will be in order to be able to make this happen. Part of me thinks that right now, that if they continue to fight like this, suddenly Simply Steve will disappear, and it will be a fight for 5th, rather than the opportunity to potentially chase after a podium, given that Beaver's already 3 seconds clear of 4th place driver Simply Steve. So our top 3 definitely have left the rest of the grid to fend for themselves, albeit we are still early doors in this race. But as we do see Nicolator there go a bit wide as we leave his on board. When we look back to the front of the field, it's already not quite halfway down the back straight, but almost there. They're at the halfway point now, and Knotavin ahead of Bobnova, and Beaver is closing very quickly. In fact, that last lap, Beaver was 6/10 faster than Bobnova. That is an absolute monster haul of time from Beaver. Well, I can tell you one thing right now, he's definitely had his breakfast today, and whatever it has really given him a huge boost, because he is charging there like nobody's business. Simply Steve, meanwhile, in 4th place, holding off Etme Dust and Nicolator and Geng, but they have caught up to him very quickly. I think it's a poor run through the hairpin there, and suddenly Simply Steve has lost all that 1 second gap. It's been reeled entirely back down. That's not the way he wanted it to go at all. But meanwhile, with the opening 10 minutes of this race almost complete, we're going to take a trip back in time, ladies and gentlemen, and take a look at exactly how things went green flag racing. So we go back to the beginning of this race, and as the field got underway, we can see there the early start for Dickinson really catching out the middle field. In fact, a lot of drivers there tripping over each other from that blimp camera. We just showed that briefly to show you what the early start does there for Dickinson. He worked it out a treat, nobody expected it, and suddenly Geng was able to sweep round the outside to hold on to that 3rd place, but lost out versus Knotavin in the initial launch. The rest of the field then made its way in towards turn number 2. As they did so, Cat Daddy there gained a place on Pancakes, and Paperbag on the inside of Corndog for a brief moment there. Had to put the brakes on corner exit with a little bit of oversteer, and that's cold tyres and losing out. Urko as well, already making up 1 place to a Garlic Dog for the opening corner, and come the run in towards Atwood, tried to make a few more, but it didn't quite work out for him, and had to settle back in as Corndog and Payback will continue to fight, and that battle really running rampant. But of course, that was just the start, and then we did have a few big moments later on in the race, including what was Pancakes coming into the pit lane. We're not quite sure what happened to Pancakes, although I think we might be getting an answer very shortly here, as he was running 10th place, coming into that braking zone for the hairpin. And do we see anything happen here? Not quite, but it was 3 wide behind between Corndog, Biker Pilot and Paperbag, and in the end, reverse Moses manoeuvre there being performed on Paperbag, and well, definitely not what you want to see, but he got it. He got himself clear of it in the end, but lost out 2 places for that. But then on lap number 2, unfortunately, from what's looking to be a settled start to race of Paperbag, it became very unsettled when he made his way through the hairpin. And well, at this point, chasing after Urko, but got the power down too soon, and the rear of the car slightly letting go, and caught it just in the nick of time. And then we had to go forward to lap number 4 to see a bit of drama for Dickinson, who at the time was running in 2nd place. He made his way into the hairpin. SimCity Racing driver came out the corner. Rear of the car completely let go. He calls it, but unfortunately it did go to the grass in the end. By the time he rejoined, he dropped down to 4th place, but then he was still carrying momentum, ran out onto the exit curb of Revolver, and by the time he got to Piper, where he was no longer playing the pipes in the lead this group, he suddenly found himself on the outside, and Simply Steve squeezed on through, and Nicolator made it 3 wide here. Goodness me, they say kick a man when he's down, but unfortunately Nicolator there not able to quite kick him enough, as meanwhile Etme Dust looked up the inside, and goodness me, Dickinson having another swap on the car there. Well, the car switched ways on him, and suddenly for Dickinson, well, it was going from good to bad to recover to disaster there, and he fell all the way down to 8th place. We didn't expect that, but that went wrong for Dickinson. But then a lap later, A bit of an adventure for Cat Daddy coming in towards Atwood Curve. Here was the playing race cars driver making his way through, carried a lot of speed, drifted out too wide, and the rear of the car came round on him, and a small biff to the barrier there, upsetting the car. And then Urko literally doing the same, but not making it to the grass. So for Urko, it all went a bit wrong, and this is what it looked like on board from Urko's perspective. He'll see in front of him Biker Pilot, he's chasing after him, and the Bong Life Motorsport driver turns into the bend, turns in, the car starts to overturn, he corrects it, thinking he's got it overcorrected, but in the end, the car was still going there, it refused to stay settled. And then, of course, we did have a bit of a battle between Nicolate and Etri Dust, and this was the pair battling the way in towards the hairpin. And this was in the fight for 5th place. And it was Nicolate on the inside versus Etri Dust. Got a nose ahead, but then drifted out wide. It understeered out with the pool of water. And that's how Etri Dust got the place back. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's back to your live racing we go. And as we do come back, well, there's still plenty more to come in this race. We can assure you of that. We just spent the best part of 3 minutes taking a look back at some big moments. But meanwhile, more moments to come. And, well, at the front, Knotavin, Beaver and Bobnova. That's how they run currently. Beaver has found his way past Bobnova off camera, so we can't quite bring you a replay of that. In fact, we might be able to bring you a small replay of it now that we've been informed. And we do have the footage there, so we'll come back to... we'll come back to that in due course. But one of the big questions we do have is what exactly happened to Pancakes at the start of the race, and we have a black flag for Pancakes being recorded, and that's why he had to come into the pits. It wasn't for damage, it was essentially a penalty. He had to come in. Now, not what exactly for, we're not quite sure, but it was a very short stop to the pit lane. As we see there, Dickinson trying to get as much tyre temperature as possible in the rear of the picture, or trying to say, hi, mum, I'm on camera, that amount of weaving. I think it's more tyre temperature to be fair, though he will know he's on camera. And meanwhile, as we look to the foreground of this camera shot, Nicolator, Simply Steve and Geng together. Nicolator retaking that 5th place into turn 1 with a smooth move. But to be fair, Simply Steve not really fighting this too hard. I think wary of the fact they want to catch up to Etri Dust where possible. So therefore, Simply Steve is going to play the game, being the 3rd teammate there to what will be Nicolator until later on, where suddenly he will decide to go the other way and instead not be his teammate anymore, but instead go on the attack. As they make their way down the back straight, Geng they're still waiting on as well, and we are now into the phase of the race where things may be calming down. Although as soon as I say that, that's moving Beaver and Knotavin for lead of the race. They both drift sideways. They're coming for the hairpin. Knotavin then getting it together quicker than Beaver and holding on right now. And well, the pressure is definitely here. And Beaver, well, the pace that Beaver has brought to the table here today, I don't know how he does it, but I can tell you right now, well, all over the car, he's definitely making sure that his name, not just his nickname he raced under Beaver, but Nick Beaver, it says on the front of the car. And I think this is really the round today where he says, mark my name. Indeed, you could say he's trying to be the Heisenberg of this grid with this round of racing, if anyone's a Breaking Bad fan. And, well, as they make the way out to the corner right now, Beaver definitely making a huge and lasting impression here. And I think for Knotavin, he's definitely finished his match, as is Bobnova. And, well, you are seeing in this trio all 3 drivers who have won races this season so far. And, well, will we see a new name? So, well, a new name is 7 seconds behind at least in the form of Etri Dust. We'll have to wait and see what's to be as they go on to the next tour of the circuit. As they roll the one down, Beaver getting ready to bounce. We had a bit of an incident for Biker Pilot, who's dropped down to 12th place. And meanwhile, Knotavin going defensive here through first quarter. But you see Beaver there, it's the confidence that's scary about Beaver right now. The fact that he's willing to go so late on the brakes and take different lines, he really has mastered where the grip is in these wet conditions. And Knotavin tries to come around the outside, does so just about. Knotavin not going to give out the fight, to be fair. It's not as though Knotavin going to roll over on this one, and Beaver knows that just as much as everybody else. But right now, he's on the outside again. We know there's so much grip to be found on the outside outward curve. You get it right. You see that dry line, a little bit of a dry line on the entry there. In fact, that's a puddle of water as well going with it. And as they do make the way over the hill, Beaver does make that move stick, goes around the outside, gets it done. Beaver in to lead this race, but now Knotavin and Bobnova so close behind. But is this the time where Bobnova right now, who we ride on board with, thinks, okay, Knotavin has been passed, I now need to pass Knotavin to stay with Beaver. He's going to go for it on the inside. Beaver puts himself right in the middle of the road there, going as defensive as possible. And Knotavin looks for the switch back here. It's smart driving, but a little bit of tap of the brake there. I think just worried about setting the rear down. The problem is, of course, front engine rear wheel drive. If the rear of the car starts to let go and you put the brakes on, you don't help the car. What you end up doing, you actually pitch all the weight onto the nose, and these cars are very light on the rear end already, as Bobnova gives you a live demonstration there. So when you actually tap the brakes for a car that's starting to oversteer too much, you're exacerbating the oversteer, you're not carring it. What you really need to do in that situation is gently lift off the throttle to get the rear tyres to settle down, and well, that's what Bobnova had to do there. And Knotavin not able to find his way back past Beaver, so Beaver might now Yeah, start thinking about breaking away as the sun shines once again on Okayama for a brief moment, although I think this is still going to be a big battle to unfold. But further back, we had a bit of an incident for Paper Bag there in the rear of the picture. We've got a front bumper hanging off the front of Cat Daddy's car. Not quite sure what's happened there, and Biker Pilot emerges at the head of what is this trio. We've definitely had a bit of drama, it would seem. Now, whether they've all been involved in the drama together, we'll have to wait and see, as Cat Daddy's not done yet. Looking around the outside of Biker Pilot, onto the brakes they go. And right now, Biker Pilot just digging in there, and Cat Daddy goes a bit wide. Well, he definitely ticks him off, as meanwhile Urko has had to retire from this race, and we believe that is due to an issue that's happened with the car. Unfortunately, we have lost Urko from this one. It was an open lap incident that sent him out of the race, but there's still more to come from all the other drivers out there. But it's sad that we don't get to see Urko in this race anymore, so we have our first retirement of the day, and Beaver, Knotavin and Bobnova still together here. But now that Beaver's leading, can he make the breakaway? That is going to be the big question for the remaining 22 minutes and the final lap of the distance. But Cat Daddy found his way back into Biker Pilot. That's on the exit of the final corner to go on to lap number 10. So right now they continue to fight each other. Paper Bag a bit further back. But with that, we do take a look back at some of the big moments only moments ago, including firstly what happened to Bobnova being passed by Beaver at the end of lap 7. So this was the first move being made, and in fact, there's Bobnova there. So I think the move had already been made, to be fair, and I wonder it was a continuity error. So we do apologise for a bit of confusion there. The move had been made, we can't get a replay of that move for second place, and Bobnova there gained the place briefly due to discontinuity for Beaver, but the reality was he never made the pass. But anyway, we did get to see Nicolator make a pass on Simply Steve, and this was coming out of the final corner. It's gone to their lap number 8, and Simply Steve, not having the best of runs out the final corner, making a proverbial ham sandwich out of it. And well, Nicolator on the inside there. It was a drag race down towards turn number 1. Both drivers working hard there, as meanwhile Dickinson trying to weave in the background to warm up his tyres. And well, in the end, it was a move made by Nicolator that topped it off for 5th place, with Simply Steve watching on behind. But it was smooth for them. Meanwhile, we saw what was the brilliant battle for lead between Beaver and Knotavin. And this was coming in towards the hairpin. Beaver looked up the inside under braking, as he did so. Knotavin tried to hold it all the way around the outside, and he did that time as Beaver got a bit too sideways. So Knotavin dug in, as meanwhile we did have a bit of a moment for Biker Pilot on lap number 8. And this was where we did see the Pikachu machine get it all wrong at the hairpin. And well, it was first, of course, none other than what was Paper Bag going into the corner, and Biker Pilot saw the rear of the car completely lose communication with the front of the car, and it went round. But thankfully able to avoid the barrier and gradually rejoin to give a place up to Cat Daddy. Now, a lap later, we did see Beaver finally make his move for the lead, and this was a move that started at the opening corner, and it was completed at Atwood. Knotavin defending hard on the inside, but in the end, Beaver simply said, well, if you're going to defend the inside, I'm going to take the M&M approach and go all the way around the outside. And he got it done just like that, finding that grip that's available at Atwood, and was able to power his way on past. But in turn, we did have difficulty for Pancakes on lap 9. And this was your SimCity racer driver coming in towards turn number 2. When he said it went wrong, we'd already come in quite hot. You could see the rear of the car starting to lift there as he went through, and it went very sideways, and that's how he did lose out. And then we did have a bit of difficulty for Paper Bag at the hairpin late on that lap. There was Cat Daddy on the inside of him, but he went through the corner, got the power down, and the rear of the car let go. But unfortunately, Cat Daddy had no time to react there. That explains where the damage came to the front of the car, and it was simply because what Paper Bag had done, and once the car started to let go, he put the brakes on to stop it, which it would have been fine, but Cat Daddy at that point could not see it in time or react in time and made the contact there. So that explains the story as we come back to your live racing, ladies and gentlemen. And as we do come back, there's still plenty more racing to come. And in fact, Beaver is into the pit lane. Interesting. So Beaver's made his way in, and to prove it, there he is, making his way down on pit road. He's coming in for a pit stop here. Is the car under-fueled? Alternatively, is he going to the dry tyre? Well, it comes in, and it looks so there, a little bit fast power, and the car goes up onto the jacks. He's going to the slick tyre. I don't believe it. Surely not. I think that's too much of a risk there for Beaver personally. I think you want to stay on these wet tyres for some time, but Beaver coming in, unless his wet tyres are just completely given way of how hard he's worked them, well, either way, he's in. Bobnova as well making his way onwards, and Bobnova has been dropped. We're not quite sure if there's been anything to mandate this, other than the fact that Beaver's just into the pit lane. He's leaving it now. Empty dust out there as well. Surely it won't be for a fuel stop. But Empty Dust following Simply Steve, and we are just double checking with regards to any information we've had come through. I don't think we're able to get a replay of anything with regards to what's happened. But Nick Beaver definitely coming on in, And, well, in the end, it is just a pit stop for him. He's giving it a gamble going to the slick tyre. And Beaver's already struggling as he comes back out. There's a spin for him at turn number 1. I think right now that is a bit too enthusiastic to go to the slick tyre. He's going to try and get temperature into it. But for Beaver, Sunny, oh, and it goes sideways again. And no, it's not the right time to be on the wet whatsoever for Beaver. Oh, and it goes around there. And that is Pancakes going to the barrier there through turn number 2. Pancakes gets it wrong. Beaver gets it wrong as well. But to be fair, Pancakes on wet tyres are feeling a bit of heat. Meanwhile, Beaver trying to survive on slick tyres here. They've come out of some thermal jackets, but they've got nowhere near enough tyre temperature here to be able to be up to speed. So Sunny, Beaver has thrown this race to the wind, and Knotavin, I don't think he's going to quite believe this at the moment. I think he's thinking to himself, why on earth has he come on in? Well, right now, it's one driver's mistake on strategy that's opened up the doorway for another driver to retake the lead this race. And we've still got plenty of time to go as Pancakes jumps to the pit lane. So he's had to tow, and that's due to the big whack to the barrier at turn number 2 that Pancakes has had. Not always wanted it to go whatsoever. Whereas Pancakes does now sit in the pit lane and wait for the tow time, plus also that fast repair to be implemented. It will put him a lap down on this race. So we do have our second driver who's had to make his way to the pit lane, but hopefully not our second retirement due to the damage. And we'll empty Dust and Simply Steve together again for 6th place here, enjoying a good little ding-dong scrap as they make the way down at the start for this stretch. Well, 17 minutes still to go, and this race continues to keep on giving, ladies and gentlemen. No doubt about it. When it comes to surprises, twists and turns, you name it, it has got it. But as we do see Empty Dust on the back of Simply Steve and Corndog just in front. Well, Corndog right now, he's definitely had a bit of a quieter race. Remember, he started in 11th place. He's made his way all the way up to 5th, but we are starting to see Simply Steve and Empty Dust get a bit closer here, and I think Corndog might be struggling a little bit with regards to pace in the car as Dickinson in, and that car is going up into the jacks, ladies and gentlemen. There's your proof. And as he's been serviced here, well, I think there is a cutover point potentially to go to the slick tyre. This early, though, I think some drivers might be struggling with the life of their wet tyres at the moment. Those wet tyres will be feeling quite a bit of heat. And remember, the wet tyre, uninitiated, is a treaded tyre, so it's much like your conventional road tyre, which has tread blocks to help displace water. Meanwhile, the dry tyre, or the slick tyre as it's aptly named, it is the slick because it has no tread blocks to it. It is a flat surface that offers the maximum possible grip, but it struggles to displace water. But the thing with the wet tyre is, as you wear it down, you're wearing off the tread blocks, and a fully worn wet tyre before it disintegrates is essentially a poor man's slick tyre, whereby you've got no tread blocks left and you've got a completely worn down amount of rubber, so it is essentially a slick tyre with no life in it anymore, and indeed needs to be put to pasture. So that's what our drivers might be struggling with at the moment, is the fact where they've had to work so hard in the wet conditions in the first 20 minutes of this race. Well, suddenly the slick tyre is looking appetising, but you can see the spray contrails at the back of the cars, the spray vortices right now, and understandably it is too wet out there to gamble going to a slick tyre. And Dickinson's into the barrier there at turn number 2. When it went wrong for Beaver, and now Dickinson's paying the price as well, and it's the same barrier that's claimed his teammate of Pancakes. So both drivers, Dickinson and Pancakes, both getting caught out of turn 2, both with similar spins, but it is for Dickinson on a slick tyre, we believe. Meanwhile, for Pancakes, it was worn wet tyres as Pancakes leaves the pit lane in a fully repaired car, which is great to see. He's getting back out there, but he is a lap down. But meanwhile, going on to another lead lap, it is going to be Simply Steve and Empty Dust, but they swap places. Empty Dust up the inside here. And well, smooth move there for the Speed Squad driver. They want to chase down Corndog and they want to get through, and they're going to put their quicker driver at the front of the attacking formation in order to do so. And Corndog right now will definitely know that he's got to try and defend as much as possible for Bad Math Sim Sports to hold on to this top 5 finish. And well, definitely these are some big points for him. He's not quite had a landmark result so far this season, but could this be the one that definitely puts him up there in the spotlight? Albeit you can see Empty Dust a bit late on the brakes. The concertina effect always exaggerating what is braking zones quite a bit, but as they come out the corner, well, make no exaggeration here in the fact that it is Empty Dust who's had the better run out of turn 4, and Sunny, he will be on the inside left of your pitch there. He'll pull across gradually, only to find that Corndog is matching him for pace. Corndog on that wider line naturally will build up a bit more speed in the end, and it will be too wide into the braking zone for the hairpin. But can Empty Dust win this on the brakes? He looks so he can, as meanwhile, well, that's Gang. Apologies for that, as the camera briefly cut to him, and he's just bringing himself through the revolver. But Empty Dust does get that move done versus Corndog, and Simply Steve tucks in behind. So Empty Dust definitely looking to be the quicker of the two Speed Squad machines. Simply Steve's got a bit more work to do if he wants to try and find out the equation that's going to enable him to get past the Bad Math Sim Sport machine of Corndog. But onwards they go. Still some more laps to come between all these drivers, no doubt about it. And we look back to the front of the field, and Knotavin right now still leading, as we do have Dickinson there taking a bit of a rally cross approach out the final corner. He is a lap down, so he's respecting the blue flags as best he knows how. And well, that's not going to help in that damaged car that definitely, I suspect, will need to come into the pits at some point. He's trying to survive as long as he can. Meanwhile, Biker Pilot's had a bit of difficulty. He's had a bit of a slide through the hairpin into turn 6. We're going to replay that when we can, but a few drivers struggling out there. And well, still not optimal for slick tyres at the moment. The best way to tell, of course, is the amount of spray that you see on an extended straight, where the machines get up above 100 miles an hour where possible, which the start finish straight and the back straight will both show that. Once that spray really becomes quite negligible or light, that is when we are potentially in the realm of the slick transition. So I suspect there might be an opportunity to switch to the slick tyre in around about 7 to 8 minutes time. But at that point, do you really want to go to it? Because you will be spending 23 seconds stationary in the pit lane, swapping all 4 tyres. End to end in the pit lane, your pit time loss is going to be about 45 seconds. 45 seconds with 4 minutes to go, you would be better just nursing the current set of wet tyres to the finish, given the fact they're not likely to burst and blister at that point. Now, of course, if the wet tyres warm down enough, unfortunately, we won't see spectacular pieces of rubber flying through the air, like what you would see in reality where the tyre will burst and break. What you will see in the end on iRacing is that the driver will essentially be mandated to come into the pit lane. They will receive the proverbial meatball flag or the orange circle surrounded by a black background because they are on a tyre that is unsafe to continue, and essentially that would be a warning to a driver they need to come in before the tyre would burst off of the what would be the rim. So that is the full process there, and how iRacing does model wet tyre degradation to the point whereby the wet tyre is no longer feasible, whereby if the tyre is in such a critical state, drivers will be required to come into the pit lane. Otherwise, they will be disqualified from the race. Alternatively, they need to get to the end within 3 laps. But meanwhile, Bobnova, he's not getting to the end of this race without pressure as he drifts his way through turn number 11. Nicolator staying with him, and right now Nicolator has been definitely saving that wet tyre as he goes on the attack here versus the 605. On the inside, onto lap 16 he goes. This might be a straightforward move here for Nicolator if he times his braking right, but Bobnova's not going to let him have it easy. Well, in the end, he's not going to have a say on this because Nicolator does get ahead, but into Williams now. Can he sweep it around the outside? Bobnova does get to have his say in the end. 2 wide they enter into the quarter here. Bobnova still there. Nicolator on the outside, drifting, just about stays with the white lines. And as he makes his way onwards towards the Moss Bend, well, right now, 2 wide they go. Brilliant racing between them. Bobnova's not backing out. Nicolator refuses to give an inch. Well, in the end, they're going to give a yard, but it's Bobnova breaks very late. And Bobnova outbreaks himself into Atwood, and Sonny Nicolator moves up into 2nd place. He'll be proud of that one. Brilliant racing between them, but in the end, Bobnova in his feast to try and hold on, outbroke himself in towards turn number 4, and for Bobnova he slips back to 3rd place. But that now means that Nicolator, of course, needs to make a comfortable break here and maintain that gap as much as possible. And well, that naturally brings us to a bit of a segue to take a look back at some of the big moments over the last 20 minutes or so in this race, ladies and gentlemen, as we start to head towards the conclusion. But what a race it has been so far. And in terms of big moments, well, of course, here's the first one. Beaver on a new set of slick tyres, leaving the pit lane on lap 12 and discovering those slick tyres have got no grip whatsoever. Going around before he's even been able to clear the opening corner, and well, that would continue for Beaver as everyone else made the way on past. But it went wrong for Beaver and he had to get it turned back around. But we had a big shunt of the Pancakes only moments later. And this was Pancakes making its way through turn number 2 on wet tyres, quite used wet tyres. The rear car started to let go, tried to catch it as Beaver was recovering, and into the barrier he went there. Big hit to the barrier, the front left suspension dropping as a result of that contact. And for Pancakes, I believe that's what forced the mandated tow to the pit lane. But then for Dickinson, he decided to go to slick tyres, following the footsteps of Beaver. And turn 1, discovering very quickly, there's no grip on them as he went very wide, drifted his way out the corner, only to drift to the barrier, big shunt to the barrier, and that's definitely hurt his race. Then we did have a bit of a battle between Empty Dust and Simply Steve, with the run down towards turn 1 here, and Empty Dust in the end did sneak up the inside of his teammate, but I think the two of them decided to rehearse this a little bit to make sure that it was the quicker driver who was taking the position, and therefore going hunting after Corndog, and in the end was able to pass Corndog moments later on lap 14, and this was down at the hairpin in a drag race towards that braking zone. Corndog had already been initially passed in the run through Atwood, only to be able to match Empty Dust on pace, and then into the braking zone, Empty Dust able to seal the deal there, parking it on the apex, and making sure there was no comeback there for Corndog. But after that, we did a bit of difficulty for Biker Pilot and also for Cat Daddy. And this was a Biker Pilot following that Cat Daddy just in front. So Biker Pilot, I think, did have it go wrong first, going through Revolver. The rear of the car did let go. And then Cat Daddy, in a wounded car, well, he had it go a little bit wide coming out of Piper Bend. But it didn't quite go wrong for him there. It took until a bit of a later corner for it to go wrong for him. And it was, in fact, the last corner where suddenly Cat Daddy discovered the fact that the car's definitely not feeling 100%. As he rolled through the bend, the rear of the car let go. Did he stop it from going to the tyre barrier? Yes, he did so. But then we did have a bit of difficulty for what was Bobnova as well, but not without an epic battle on lap 16 for second place. Nicolator versus Bobnova. Feast your eyes on this, ladies and gentlemen. And this, of course, was only about to go too wide into turn one. They went for second, with Knotavin already 7 seconds up the road. And, well, Knotavin not at fault for these two, as Nicolator got to the inside, but to the outside of Williams he went. And it would be Bobnova then who defended hard. But you can see there the fact they both got to give each other room. Nicolator more sideways to the straight coming out the corner, but drifted it to perfection. And as they made the way in towards the Moss S, where it was Bobnova on the outside, but into the braking zone he went here, carried a lot more speed, but unfortunately discovering too much speed can lead you to the gravel, and Bobnova losing the position as a result, as we make our way back to your live racing. But as we do come back, 7.5 minutes left on the clock, still more to come between all the drivers. No question about it, ladies and gentlemen, but right now for this man, well, for Knotavin, it's going to be a situation whereby I think he's becoming the feature race expert at the moment, because after the back-to-back wins at Alton Park, it was a win in the feature at Tsukuba, and it's going to potentially be a win here in the feature at Okayama. I don't say it is going to be, but potentially it will be, simply because we don't want to put the commentator's cursor with 7 minutes to go, and anything can happen before this is all over. And we've seen that time and time again in the Just 2 Idiots Championship Series. You never count your chickens before they've hatched, as the saying goes. Nicolator will be feeling that right now, because whilst he did drop Bobnova to 3 seconds, suddenly Bobnova is coming back very quickly. He's like the bad rash that won't go away. It's Bobnova. No matter how much ointment you put on right now, he will be there or thereabouts. 1.5 seconds behind. That last lap, he stripped a whole second out of Nicolator. Keeps up at that rate of knots. Within 2 laps, he'll be fighting him. Again, 11 seconds behind running in 4th place. Well, he's in a very lonely 4th at the moment. This race has definitely spread out a little bit, but I think that's more through battling and also drivers just acclimatising to the evolving conditions. We definitely do have a circuit now, which is a lot drier than it was at the start of the race, but it is not in condition yet for slick tyres, although Beaver making his way around at the moment. And we're still struggling for pace out there. So is Dickinson, the two who went to the slick tyre. And well, Dickinson has only made the 1 pit stop in a heavily damaged car. Pancakes, of course, came into the pits for repair work. And well, he's out there on wet tyres currently, making up quite a bit of time. And our running slick drivers at the moment lapping in the 2-minute 3s, 2-minute 4s, whereas all of our wet runners in the 1-minute 55s to 56s. So that's the difference, albeit Bobnova here is going to try and put in another 54 if he can. He tries to close that gap down. Nicolator 54.954, Bobnova 55.084. So in fact, scratch that. It does seem as though Nicolator now continuing the theme of 54s. And is slowly closing on Knotavin, but to be fair, when Knotavin's got almost an 8-second gap, he can afford to turn down the wick a little bit here and stay safe for the remainder. But where there is a battle potentially to brew, as Epmy Dust leaves it behind in the foreground of your camera shot. In the main picture now, it is Corn Dog versus Simply Steve for 6th place. And, well, Epmy Dust very quickly made his way past, a bit of a pace advantage. But Simply Steve relinquishing the position to his teammates when they went to get past Corn Dog. But Corn Dog definitely the match for Simply Steve here, as we ride aboard, looking down from the gyro camera for the Speed Squad 23. As he powers his way onwards, right now definitely rolling with the contours of the circuit, looking to attack with 5 minutes to go. But the problem is, of course, when you're this close at the moment, where do you find the extra time to get even closer? Well, you've got to try and pressure a mistake out of your rival. And Corn Dog here definitely making a bit of a mistake for that, but does not get the exit line at all. And in fact, here comes Simply Steve. Good run as they power the way down the back stretch. This might be his one chance to get this done as he gets ready to go on to the brakes. Looking down the inside here versus the Mastermobile. And, well, getting ready to go on to the anchors. Here they go. Too wide on entry, but who's going to be leading on the exit? Well, Simply Steve will get ahead, but does he overcook out the braking? Brake disclaimer red hot there. And he will have the inside out of Revolver bend, so it will be a successful defensive line he'll take. And just like that, Corn Dog in the end doesn't have a response. Simply Steve up in the 6th place. And Corn Dog now will go from hunted to hunter. And would he be quicker as the hunting driver? Well, some drivers are, some are not. And we'll see very shortly what the answer to that question will be. We're looking back to Garlic Dog meanwhile. He runs in 9th place. His teammate there in the foreground of the camera shot of none other and Cat Daddy. So the two of them running together on circuit at the moment, 6.5 seconds apart. Well, Cat Daddy in the lead of the playing race cars machines. Once again, the team will be getting a double top 10. Some good points for them, but not quite the top 5 they're perhaps hoping for at some point this season. But definitely they'll go into the mid-season break with a bit of momentum on their side. They'll be pleased with that. But the big question is, what about the Bobnova Motorsport machines of Nicolator and Urko? Well, one of them currently running in second place, that's Nicolator, and the other one has retired from this race due to an earlier incident. So that means they are going to lose some momentum, but they will be safe at the top of the points tower. And it will be looking quite good for them, presuming it's how things finish currently. Of course, it's not over yet until it is over. We'll wait and see what's to be. But looking a bit further down the order, a lap down, here is Beaver on those slick tyres still. He has got some temperature in those tyres now, but the problem is he still had to tiptoe for a lot of the corners here and tried to avoid the wettest parts of the track. And that's why he's lapping in the 2-minute 2s, but where he can, he will be trying to push his way in towards the 1-minute 50s, albeit I suspect by the end of the race it will be around a 1-minute 58, 1-minute 59 he'll be targeting, which will still be the best part of 3 to 4 seconds off of the majority of the field's pace on the wet tyre. So for Beaver, an unsuccessful gamble with regards to tyre choice, and to be fair, deciding to throw caution to the wind on it, and understanding as there is a drop score this season, as we only have 6 rounds, there's that singular drop score. Beaver having already missed 2 rounds, while those becomes a drop score, the other one is a 0, so he's already with a disadvantage. It's not to say it's impossible to take the crown, you need to take essentially every win and hope that the leading drivers in the championship lose the major points, but Beaver willing to risk it there, but definitely the risk that has not paid off today, unfortunately for him, as he makes his way along and towards the next set of hairpins. But as he has a lap put on him by Dust, coming up shortly behind it is Simply Steve, and Beaver steps aside there, and so does Cordo. But of course, for Beaver, that is going to cost him quite a bit of tyre temperature. It also potentially cools, well, it doesn't just cool down his tyres, but also potentially cools down his pace and his rhythm, something he might have been finding. A lot of these drivers are rhythm-based drivers as well. Once they get into rhythm, they're very hard to shake out of it. But looking to the front of the field, do we have a late twist of the tail coming here, ladies and gentlemen? We've got 2 laps to go, including that we've gone on to lap 21 of our 22-lap race. Knotavin leads, but the gap has come down from 8 seconds to 4.6, and on that last lap, it was 1.8 seconds taken out of that lead by Nicolator. Nicolator is pushing hard right now. He is actually lapping 9/10 lap faster than Bobnova. Open up that gap. Is Nicolator on course here to pull off a late surprise? With so, it definitely would be a huge surprise. It would be a huge twist, but I think he needs about 3 or 4 more laps, unless the time you see in the foreground of your camera shot makes an absolute cataclysmic mistake here, just simply because he's got enough of a gap to play with, and that will be tyre life going against Knotavin versus Nicolator, who seems to have preserved his wet tyres much better by comparison in the early stage of the race, and well, it's working out top trumps for him, but let's wait and see. As I say, we've got this lap plus 1 more, and anything could happen before we do get to the finish line. It's Bobnova running in 3rd. Well, he is 12 seconds ahead of this man, Geng, who right now, well, not on course for a podium. That maiden podium of the season still awaits him, but understandably, he will be happy here to be the first driver to finish off of the podium in this race, and after what was that 6th place start, well, not the 6th place start in the end, what was that 6th place finish in race number 1? Well, right now, Geng still doing a bit more work out there. In fact, it was a 7th place finish in race number 1 now, when he get it right, and indeed, he's picking up more points, but Geng's still got a bit of work to do if he wants to find that first podium, as he goes a bit deep there towards Redburn. Oh, I think those tyres definitely feeling the pain. But meanwhile, as we do have the Knotavin heading to line, and in fact, we are going to get the checkered flag a little bit early, ladies and gentlemen. So, with 10 seconds to go, it is going to be victory for the Knotavin in the end. And, well, he takes the win by 2.8 seconds ahead of Nicolator. And then it will be Bobnova who comes on through to complete the top 3. And, well, Bobnova there will be happy to be back on the podium. As meanwhile, Geng, 12 seconds behind, completes his race in 4th place. First off of the podium, 2.5 seconds ahead of Dust, who was slowly closing down that gap, but needed a few more laps. And who will be 6th? Will it be Simply Steve or will it be Corn Dog? In a race to line, it is going to be Simply Steve who brings on home that final spot inside the top 6 ahead of Corn Dog, and it'll be a 36-second gap to Cat Daddy. But before we get to him, Pancakes coming on through there in 12th place, lap down, just fended off Beaver to the finish line. Paperbag has already finished in 11th place, and Dickinson in 14th. And then we will see Cat Daddy very gradually make his way towards the finish line here as he comes on down, and as he does so, well, for Cat Daddy, it is going to be 8th place on the road here today. And, well, not quite the points he wanted, but it's another double points finish for playing race cars. And he'll be the head of this one as he comes to line. And then we will see Garlic Dog shortly come through in the rear of your picture. There he is. And he'll be charging towards a 9th place finish. And 20 seconds behind him will be your last lead lap finisher of the race. Well, before we get to that person, here's Garlic Dog to line then. And he'll be the second member of playing race cars, a double top 10 for them. And then Biker Pilot comes through in the damaged surprise Pikachu machine. But still, the 3.8 racing driver here gets it home to complete the top 10. And it is a solid result for him, given how everything's transpired today for the 42 driver. But he'll still be pleased with that. As he comes on through, rounded off the finishing order. Well, meanwhile, we almost got caught out there, but thankfully we did get the word come through right at last moment. We were only getting 21 laps. It was absolutely on the line to get in a 22nd lap in the end by 5 seconds, but the race has been called. We do run into a very strict schedule, to be fair, with these races, so we always do have that risk, of course, of not quite getting the extra lap, even though technically we have 3 or 4 seconds to get the extra lap, if you will. The race will be called early in that instance sometimes, but Knotavin making it his 4th win of the season and becoming a feature race expert, no doubt about it. But behind him in the end, Nicolator came alive in the late stage of the race to fend off Bobnova, but ran out of time to hunt down Knotavin, and Bobnova making it another podium, and a very proud one at that as they all cool off into the pits. Simply Steve, meanwhile, not quite on the pace of his team of Emi Dust, but in the end was able to find a way ahead and hold off Corn Dog, and Emi Dust and Simply Steve for Speed Squad 5th and 6th. They'll be very pleased to emerge from Japan with a big haul of points from today's round at Okayama, no doubt about that. But as all the drivers called it off, we take a look to the scenic view, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, I think we have run out of replay tape there, so therefore it does mean you're going to have to bear with us as we do get you those race results. They are just going to take a tiny bit of time, and well, I think they are going to pop up on screen very shortly. And in fact, there they are. Unfortunately, you can't quite look to the scenic view, but no worries at all, as we do see in the end, after a brilliant 40 minutes of racing, where it has been a brilliant drive in the end today from none other than Knotavin, the night racing driver, bringing on home the win. Took the lead early on in the race, but then, of course, it all went a bit differently because Beaver came through to take the lead off of him, and then midway through the race, Beaver opted to come into the pit lanes, put on slicks. It was the incorrect cool and tyre strategy, and staying on your original wets was the game, and Knotavin improved it by taking the win for night racing by 2.8 seconds. Bobnova Motorsports, Nicolator fought his way gradually up from 6th place to make it what was another podium, and the Bobnova Motorsport driver this time taking to the second step. He really has been second and third place all season long when it comes to podiums, but yet to be a winner. But will he be able to find his way to the win when we come back after the mid-season break? Still, the Bobnova Motorsport driver will be absolutely proud of that, and Bobnova completed that top 3 for Team What Team after that brilliant battle with Nicolator saw him go to the gravel out, which has been a bit too enthusiastic with the brake pedal, but in the end, the 605 driver making it onto the podium and picking up some very valuable points. It was Gang in 4th place there for Abicular. And we're in the end at 4 Gang. A happy day today. 4th place there. Not quite, of course, the win or a podium, but I feel like a personal win to be the first off of the podium ahead of the Speed Squad pair of Emi Dust and Simply Steve, who he did see 2 seconds behind. Emi Dust was the quicker of the two, but in the end was able to make sure that he finished in good points with Simply Steve there with him, and Simply Steve hold off Corn Dog by 2 attempts to the finish line. In fact, only a 10th at the line. The Bad Mass Simsport driver taking 7th place there. Another good showing from him, but still chasing those top 5s with Cat Daddy in 8th place there for playing race cars ahead of his teammate of Garlic Dog. And then we did see your final top 10 finisher and your final lead lap finisher, Biker Pilot 3.8 Racing. We took that 10th place there. It was a lap down for the privateers of Paperbag, Pancakes, Beaver and Dickinson. 2 laps down in fact for Dickinson. And we'll do keep in mind, of course, that Paperbag in the end just struggled his way to 11th place after a great race one. Unfortunately, the conditions proved a bit more challenging for the number 8 driver in race number 2, but he held on with Pancakes there 12th after his big shunt to the barrier through turn number 2. And Beaver's gamble to the slick tyres did not work out, and the winner of the sprint for it all away with that gamble, only edging 13th from the end. Dickinson also went to the slick tyre, but unfortunately had to come back into the pit lane and therefore finished 2 laps down. And Urko with that early retirement, of course, unfortunately retiring from the late race only 5 laps in. Unfortunately, didn't quite see what happened to Urko for Bobnova Motorsport. But that completes your rundown of the provisional results for the feature race, subject to any insurance inquiries, ladies and gentlemen. And that does, of course, complete our time here at Okayama for round number 3 of Season 13 of the MX-5 Edition Championship for the Just 2 Idiots Championship Series. And, well, what a round we've had here in our aptly named Mr. Plane back due to Florida Heatstroke round, sponsored by Omega. And that completes the first half of the season. So that only means one thing, ladies and gentlemen. It does mean it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show, and perhaps you're sat there right now wanting to know more about the Just 2 Idiots Championship Series, or the J2ICS as it is acronym to, well, do be sure to check out our official website, www.j2ics.com, and seen on screen. Indeed, it's our complete compendium of everything you need to know about getting on the grid for the Just 2 Idiots Championship Series or our Cup Series, and of course you've got the full history, all about us there, all the race results from previous seasons and previous years. You've also got our current schedule, all of our broadcasts on there, you name it, all the information is available. And there's never been a better time if you're looking for a friendly, casual and competitive community to go racing with on the North American continent, but open to anybody around the world. Well, the Just 2 Idiots Championship Series definitely is the place to be, as we pack plenty of variety. Remember, season 12 we're racing LMP2s, this season we're racing MX-5s, and we race pretty much everything there is available on iRacing. So long as there is an appetite for it, we'll definitely race it at some point for our weekly competitive series. But of course, if you don't want to go to our website, perhaps you're more of a community person, perhaps you'd like to be around people. Who doesn't, to be fair? Sim racing is all about the people that make up the grid. We do have our official Discord, which is the beating heart of the community, and the invite link is available on screen there if you want to get up to speed with the drivers, the staff, and also the admin members, and get yourself very much onto the grid. If you've got any questions, do head to the official Discord. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, well, that completes the first half of the season. Our first 3 of 6 rounds are done and dusted, and next time, after our mid-season break week, we'll be back for all the racing action in our American triple header to see us through to the end of the season. First up, the Chicago City. It will be in the state of Illinois that we resume the racing on the NASCAR Chicago Street Race Course in 2023. And whilst all the racing for round number 4 will occur on Wednesday the 8th of July, we'll be bringing it to you as if it were live on Thursday the 9th. And as we make our way into the mid-season break, how exactly do the standings stand? Well, provisionally, we can read out for you in the Drivers' Championship. It is looking to be a very firm run at the front for none other than Knotavin. Although, to be fair, we do have Nicolator keeping him honest in second, and bringing along behind him the speed squad machine of Simply Steve. But Nicolator is the leading charger after Knotavin, but given the performances of Bobnova and also Beaver making his debut as this round, you can imagine Knotavin will definitely be shaken to think that nothing seems to be certain, and indeed he's going to have to keep up his best efforts all the way through the final 3 rounds. Meanwhile, in the Teams Championship, well, Bobnova Motorsport's lead has been slashed by Speed Squad today, particularly with that retirement in the feature race for Urco. And whilst Bobnova Motorsport still leading by approximately 15 points, Speed Squad are closing, and playing race cars are right behind them. So the Teams Championship is tightening. The Drivers' Championship definitely is on a bit of a precipice for some drama, and that means it will be the perfect opportunity for us to come back in 2 weeks' time to see how it all continues and to see whether the leaders stay on top or whether we see new names emerge at the front after round number 4. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, we have been the Just 2 Idiots Championship Series, and I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh. You've been tuning to a Paul's production. That's all we've got time for here at Okayama. We'll see you in 2 weeks, but until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, as always, remember to stay on track. Good night.